Mark Passio is an independent researcher, public speaker, radio talk show host, conference organizer, and freedom activist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mark has undertaken the task of assembling vast amounts of research in the areas of metaphysics, occultism, spirituality, symbology, and consciousness studies. In 2007, Mark began presenting this information in the form of a presentation series entitled What on Earth is Happening?, with the intention of bringing the implications of this body of knowledge to greater public awareness. Mark launched his own website in 2008 at whatonearthishappening.com, and what a great website that is. In 2010, Mark began hosting his own weekly internet radio show, also called What on Earth is Happening, which airs live every Saturday night on the Republic Broadcasting Network, and that's 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mark is also one of the co-hosts of the Free Your Mind, the Philadelphia-based conference on consciousness, mind control, and the occult. Over the years, Mark has worked closely with activist groups in his area, such as the Tesla Science Foundation, Truth, Freedom, Prosperity, and Survive and Thrive Philadelphia. Mark's latest endeavor is teaching an intensive seminar called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction and How to Apply It in Your Life. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Passio. Thank everyone so much for being here today. It's really great to see so many of you out here, and it's going to be a great day today. The session today is going to be information-packed, and I'm going to cover a lot of ground. I'd like to start off by asking people, how many people are new or relatively new to my work by a show of hands, please? That is great, great. I love to see new people turn out. So not everybody may be familiar with my presentation style, but you'll become so as the day progresses. I'm going to give a talk here today that is entitled New Age Bullshit and the Suppression of the Sacred Masculine Revisited, with even more New Age deceptions exposed. Okay, so that's the title card right there. Now, some people may say that's a little bit harsh of a title, okay? I think it accurately describes what I'm going to present here today. But for people that want a title with a little bit more of a delicate sensibility, maybe to post on YouTube or share on their Facebook page, I like to look at this presentation as Streetwise Spirituality for the 21st Century and Beyond. So that's the alternative title if the first one's a little harsh for people. Okay? And that's really what I'm going to be getting into here today. I consider what I do, I consider what I teach Streetwise spirituality. Okay? So it's spirituality tempered with logic and reason. It's spirituality that is anchored in right action in the world. Okay? So, with that having been said, let's get started. But before we actually get started, I usually give a little bit of a caveat about my presentation style and about what you might expect here today in my presentation and what I would hopefully expect from the audience members. So, my presentation style has been described by some people, and rightly so actually, as very intense. I can be very intense, and there'll be moments where I'll even get very passionate up here, possibly. Okay? So expect that. Some people have described my presentation style as combative sometimes, and I won't even deny that because, you know, so it is combative in some ways. I look at it as I'm fighting the forces of mind control and deception that can be combative. All right? So some people may get a little upset or even maybe angered at some of the things that I'm going to say here today. And that's okay. So be it if that happens. I don't expect not to upset some people. All right? So the fact of the matter is that the truth itself is combative because it's belligerent. It's been described, truth has been described by some teachers as belligerent. Okay, when you hear it, especially when you're first hearing some uncomfortable truths. Because by its nature, it's actually waging war against the forces of deception and mind control. So another thing I like to tell my audiences is I don't do this. I didn't get involved in what I do in presenting material like this to be liked. This isn't a popularity contest for me, okay? I don't do this to make money, to be popular, to make new friends. If new friends are made, great. It's an added perk. It's an added bonus. I won't fight that, but that's not why I do what I do. I tell people that if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really want to be doing this. This isn't what I prefer to be doing with my time, to be honest. Okay? I do this with my time because I feel this is critical information for people to understand at the point in history in which we are living. Okay? I feel that I already know and understand what I'm going to present here today. I think I know it very well, actually. So, for me to keep repeating it, it's not really doing me that much good. I'm here to try to convey an important message, again, of streetwise spirituality to people who may have been deceived by the New Age movement, as we're going to talk about. The real reason I do this is because I recognize that in the time we're living in such a time of overwhelming ignorance and deception, okay, the fact that I understand this information and how it is deceiving a lot of people places myself, in a position of moral obligation to speak that truth to other people in order to help them to understand this information as well. That's why I do what I do. So another couple of caveats I want to mention to the audience members is that everybody here today should try to do two specific things within the best of your ability. The first is and this is if you want to take away maximum value from what I'm going to present here today. The first is try to set aside your perceptions of me. Now, I know that's very difficult for a lot of people to do. As a matter of fact, that's difficult for most people to do, to be honest. But I'm not the important one here, okay? I'm not important. The information is what is important. When you see this presentation online or you send it to some friends, I'm not even going to be in it. You're not going to see my image in it. You're going to see the slides with my voice over the slides. That's how I'm going to present it online. Okay? So, I'm not the important one. You have to try to take your attention and focus off things like how I dress, how I look, what my hair looks like, what my voice sounds like, all of those things. They're the unimportant parts of this. Focus on the information. If you focus on trivialities, it's going to detract your attention from the information. The second thing is be consciously aware of your own internal impulses, your own emotions that are going on, because you may hear me say some things that upset you. Okay? You cannot gauge the veracity or truthfulness of information based on your initial emotional reaction to hearing it for the first time. If you do that, it is a logical fallacy. Okay? Truthfulness of information has nothing to do with how it makes you feel. Okay? So I'm asking people consciously, don't just try to intuit or see how this resonates with you. You really have to think this information through deeply. Process it. Okay? Come back to it even. We'll go watch it online after we're done here. Okay? After I post it. Watch it again. Really deeply process it. Don't just go off your emotional reaction and say, that made me feel bad, so therefore it can't be true. That's a logical fallacy, and people have to consciously watch for that reaction. All right. The last thing is that the seminar today is a tapestry, meant to be taken in as a whole, in its entirety. So I'm specifically asking people that if you want to take away the maximum value of what you're going to see here today, stay for the whole thing. If you can stay for the whole thing, you should stay for the whole thing. Because that's how you're going to become aware of the whole tapestry. If you hear bits and pieces, you're not really taking in the full message as a whole. All right? So I want people to get the maximum value out of this. You're spending your time to be here. You're paying with your attention and your focus to be here. And you paid money to be here. I want you to get the maximum value from that. And I think you all do too. So that's why I'm asking people, stay to understand the whole tapestry. If you don't want to stay for the question and answer session, I understand that. I'd like as many people to stay for that because I want to field your questions as well after I'm finished presenting. And a lot of times I don't have time for that, but I want to make time for that today. All right. Now let's really get started. So this presentation actually is meant to go hand in hand with my natural law seminar. Now, obviously, I can't represent this whole seminar, today. I'm going to touch on some of the points of it. But this is a seminar that I gave back in October of 2013, and I've been talking about this material for years on my website. It's called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction, and How to Apply It in Your Life. This, folks, is the real law of attraction, not the New Age nonsense variant of the laws of attraction. These are the real, in nature, operating laws of attraction that we are all bound by. And if you really need to understand this information, it goes hand in hand again with this seminar. Now, I'm aware not everybody has seen this information. The discs are available in the back. This is available for free on my website as well. Okay? So the information here will stand on its own today, but you'll get maximum absorption of this information if you combine it with the Natural Law Seminar. I just want to say that before I begin. I'm going to give a brief outline of what natural law is so people understand that term as I use it throughout the day. What is natural law as I am using it? Because many other researchers and teachers throughout the years have talked about the concept of natural law, and they may not be meaning it in the same context that I'm talking about natural law as. So this is what natural law is when I am referring to the term. All right? It is a body of universal, meaning existing everywhere in nature, non-man-made, binding, meaning they have an effect whether you understand them or believe in them or not, and immutable, meaning unchangeable by anything we are capable of doing. The laws that exist in nature, that we are bound by, they exist everywhere. They're not made by man. They're not made by any 3D beings at all, anywhere in the extant universe. All right? And they are unchangeable by anything that beings in this universe are capable of doing. All right? And what do they do? What does this body of laws do? It acts as the governing dynamics for the consequences of behavior, the behavior of intelligent beings, which is why I put here human behavior, or at least beings that should be intelligent. They're not always intelligent, but they have the capacity to attain intelligence and attain the understanding of these laws. That's what I mean by human behavior, the behavior of intelligent beings. So that's what natural law is. What does it mean to understand natural law? Understanding natural law means truly possessing conscience. Not thinking that you possess conscience, actually possessing conscience. Now, people often don't know what I mean by conscience. Conscience is knowledge. Conscience isn't behavior. The exercise of conscience is behavior. Conscience itself is knowledge. We'll talk about the etymological definition of conscience later on in the lecture. Conscience is the definitive knowledge of the objective difference, not subjective, not based in perception. The objective difference between morally right behavior and morally wrong behavior. That's what it means to have conscience. And that's what it truly means to understand natural law. What does it mean to act in accordance with natural law, to align our behavior with it? Acting in accordance with natural law means exercising conscience, or willfully choosing morally right behavior over morally wrong behavior once we've taken in the knowledge of conscience, once that difference is clearly understood. That's what it means to act in accordance with natural law. What is the result that we get when we live in accordance with natural law? We get a specific result when we align our behaviors to these laws of nature. When human beings live in accordance with natural law and are therefore moral beings, then they become and remain free, and their society exists in a state of order. That's what governs order in any given system of intelligent beings. Okay? What happens when we do the reverse in our behavior? When we live in opposition to the laws of morality, which is what natural law is. When human beings live in opposition to natural law and are therefore immoral beings in their behavior, they become and remain enslaved. And their society exists in a state of chaos, which is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly where we're at. And that's the reason we're there. So that's what it means to live in opposition to natural law. That's natural law summed up in exactly as brief a way as I can do it. But I go very in depth on how this dynamic works in our lives in my natural law seminar, which I highly recommend everybody here to watch if they have not already. That's why we're in this state, folks. That's why we're on lockdown. That's why we're in a prison society. And, I recognize that it may be very difficult for people to hear if you don't already understand this is where we're at. If you don't already get that we're here as a species, it's going to be difficult for you to hear some of the things I'm going to say today. But that's where we're at. Nonetheless, that's true. So, the thing that differentiates my work and makes it different from a lot of other researchers is that I ask this fundamental question. See, some other researchers out there, they know we're in this situation, but what sets my work apart is I ask this one little, tiny, seemingly insignificant question regarding this condition. It's that question right there. Yeah, why is that the case? You can know that that's where we're at. What good is that? Unless you know what the causal factors that created that condition. That's the understanding of the real laws of attraction. The laws of attraction are about causal factors that got you to where you're at, to the experience that you're currently undergoing. And there's the question most people don't have an answer to. And there's the question I've been answering for 7 years of my life. Trying to help people to understand the answer to that question about why we're in the condition that we're in. So, for people who aren't familiar with my work, you want to go to this website. Just add .com or just type that into any search engine you happen to prefer. You'll get to me. What on Earth is Happening? That's my website, whatonearthishappening.com. Tremendous body of knowledge available at that site. I always recommend people go up to the podcast section. Don't become familiar with my work on YouTube. And it's great. Hey, if you do, wonderful. Okay, it's just an added bonus to expose my work to people. But, the YouTube stuff is ancillary to this site and the work that's there, especially the podcasts. You want to go to the podcast audio section, which is one of the main tabs on the site, and you want to go in order. Go back to number 1, listen in order. Again, it's a tapestry. It's a puzzle. I'm laying foundational work at the beginning. And later work that I get into in later podcasts, all that early work, those early podcast series, that's all prerequisite knowledge. That's why I tell people, you want to understand the whole tapestry, you have to listen in order. At your own pace, don't skip around. From number 1 forward, there's 148 2-hour podcasts up there. And a couple of them that are even longer than that. I know it's a big investment of time, but I guarantee you do that on the other side of that. If you are willing to put that kind of time in, you'll come out of it with information that I guarantee nobody else is talking about. Nobody else out there is talking about at this level of depth. So that's my site. And this is why I do this work, because I want that condition to end. I am here to end slavery on this planet, and so are you, whether you understand that or not yet. Okay? That's what we came here to do, to end slavery. Make no mistake, and that is a theme that we will constantly be going back to over the course of today. What do I mean when I say the phrase New Age movement? Okay, this is important groundwork. So people fully understand what I mean when I use that term. Like they need to understand, what do I mean when I say natural law? Okay, so when I am saying New Age movement, what am I talking about? The New Age movement constitutes a diverse body of spiritual teachings and practices which are not commonly identified with traditional religious institutions and or practices. So that's all I mean by New Age movement. They're alternative spiritual teachings that could not be grouped into a category as a specific cultural religion. And that's all I mean by the term. Okay? I don't mean the zodiacal New Age, the new house of Aquarius that we're allegedly moving toward. Okay? That time period, what that may mean, what interpretations people may have in their mind of that. It's not what I mean when I say the New Age. The New Age movement is a loosely knit conglomeration of individuals that loosely adhere to certain spiritual teachings and practices. And that's all I mean by the term. Okay? This movement, however, does share some basic characteristics in common. In that, those who comprise this movement and espouse the teachings of this movement often disseminate many erroneous, false, quote-unquote, spiritual teachings, whether deliberately putting false information out there to confuse and deceive others, or by rote, meaning someone has taken in faulty information and then is repeating it by rote because they believe it to be accurate and believe that it can help others. That's what I mean by the New Age movement, okay, and how they propagate information. What I'm going to talk about here today is the New Age movement as a religion. And many people do not consider it a religion. I, however, do. And I'm going to explain to you how it's a religion. And then we're going to talk about a lot of the deceptive teachings of it. The first thing people have to understand is, what do I mean by the term religion when I am using it? And I'm using it from its pure etymological derivative meaning. Okay? The word religion in English comes from the Latin verb religare. Religare in Latin means to tie back, to hold back, to thwart from forward progress, or to bind. Religare. So the actual root verb is ligare. Okay? That means to tie up. And then religare means to tie back. So the prefix re actually means back or again in Latin. Okay? So that's where the word religion is derived from in Latin. When I say religion in the context of how I'm going to be using it here today, I'm specifically talking about false religion. A false religion is a system of control. Control. That's its purpose. That's why it is there, to control the mind. And then therefore control the behavior. A false religion is a system of control that is based in unchallenged dogmatic belief. Not facts, not knowledge, not truth certainly, but dogmatic belief. And what it does when we cling stubbornly to those dogmatic beliefs is it holds back the progress of consciousness. We become unconscious because we are stubbornly clinging to a belief that is untrue. That's what a false religion means. Now, interestingly, this word has a double meaning, because the term religare in Latin can also mean to reunite with, or to bind back to. Okay? So if something has been separated, or something has been dismembered from its original component, okay, we can be reconnected to it. And that's what a true religion does. A false religion binds away from truth. A true religion reunites us with truth. All right? And I always tell people, the caveat here is, too many people try to make their religion into the truth, when in fact what we, in point of fact, need to be doing in our lives is to make truth into our religion as a true religion. All right? Too many people are loath to do that because they can't admit that they were wrong about their former beliefs. And that's why we're in that cage that I spoke about. That's why the mind is in a cage. So when I talk about religion here, I'm not just talking about the cultural religions. These are what I call the cultural religions. See if I can get my laser pointer working. These are the cultural religions, as I refer to them. Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Taoism, Shintoism, Buddhism, etc., so forth. Okay? That's only one kind of religion. There's 4 other kinds of religion out there. 4 other main bodies of religion, main groupings of religion. And I'm going to organize them on this slide in a specific way, in a specific order, for a reason. So I put that on the right-hand side. Now on the left-hand side, this is another religion. It's called politics, government, the belief in authority. That's a religion. You may not have ever heard it described like that. Some of you may. But nonetheless, that's a system of unchallenged dogmatic belief that is there to control people. Okay? And I put it on the left. Now, also on the left, we have this religion called scientism, as I refer to it as. Not real science, but science as practiced by government-funded grant money. Okay? And also dogmatic belief systems by people who hold tenure in universities or hold very influential, high-paying, high-finance positions in the scientism world that don't want their dogmatic belief system challenged by any new evidence, God forbid. You know? So that's also on the left-hand side for a reason. And of course, the fourth religion here on this page to round out the first four is the New Age movement, which I'm going to talk about as a religion. Now, two of them are on the left, two of them are on the right. There's a reason for that. These two religions are rooted in left brain imbalance. We're going to talk about the brain and its structure a little bit here today. These two religions are rooted in right-brained imbalance. Okay? And we'll get into that in a few moments. But that's why I organized the slide as such. Now there's one universal religion. See, not everybody falls into these categories. Not every person here will believe in all of these. Okay? Some will be more aligned with some of these belief systems than others here, possibly. Some will have freed their mind enough to know that they're all bunk, and they're all just there to control you and keep you in slavery. Okay? So, different people have different attachments to different groupings of these religions. But I'll tell you what, there's one that almost everybody universally believes is real. And whether we even believe in it, that it's real or not, we're still living in a system of slavery that unfortunately makes it necessary for most of us to engage in even at a minimal level. And it's the religion that is the most universally believed in and binds and unites all the other religions together, and it is, of course, the monetary system. That's the biggest universal religion that exists on the face of the earth. And I would say not only is that most people's religion, it's their God. It's their God. Okay? Unfortunately, but that's true. It may be sad, but it's true. So these are the five universal overarching types of religion. The universal one that, again, binds them all together is the money system. So, again, these are all the things that hold us in a state of slavery. The one thing that people can reunite themselves with that can take them out of that bondage and control and slavery is the thing that can shatter all of these belief systems that hold back the progress of consciousness, and that is truth itself. And only the power of truth can do that. Nothing else. Nothing else. Unfortunately, in the world that we're living in, truth is muddled up and it's buried under these belief systems. And that's why we're in that cage. That's why Earth's in a cage. And its people are in a cage. So, what holds these false beliefs in place? Well, what holds them in place is occulted information. Occult knowledge. Now, by a show of hands, I always ask this word because as soon as people hear that word, there's an emotional response that's usually attached to it. And that's mind control in and of itself. How many people coming here today had any idea or inkling that I would be talking about the occult? By a show of hands. Most people, but not all. But a good 85% or possibly 90%. That's good. Okay? For the others who didn't know that, we have to clarify the term. Okay? The word occult comes from the Latin adjective occultus. Alright? The Latin adjective occultus means hidden from sight. Difficult to see because it is veiled or hidden from view. That's all the word means. Okay? The word occultus, the adjective, in turn comes from the Latin verb occultare. Occultare in Latin means to hide, to conceal, to keep secret, or to keep hidden from view. To keep it veiled, to keep it concealed. So all the word occult means is hidden. That's it. We have to demystify this word because in colloquial English it has been mystified, and the word again has connotative attachment that is often emotion-based. All right? To demystify it means we're going to the original meaning of the word and what the word was originally intended to mean in the English language. And that it came from the Latin roots which mean hidden. That is all the word occult means. When there's an occultation of the moon by the earth, okay, or there's an occultation of another planet, all that means is that planet is now hidden from sight and you can't see it. So all occult means is hidden knowledge. But this little pyramid structure on the side there, it's showing you how this knowledge is being used to control. At the top, there's a very few people, okay, who have this knowledge that we're going to talk about, and they're holding it for themselves and keeping it back from other people to create a power differential. And that's what that pyramid represents, knowledge and power in society. Then down at the bottom, you have people who are completely ignorant about occult information and how it works. And they have no idea. They've been told, oh, that's bad. You know, they associate it with evil. They associate it with negativity. They associate it with wrongness. And therefore, don't ever look into that. You know, and then they don't learn. They stay ignorant. And that's how they're easy to control. Right? So they're down at the bottom, at the base of that pyramid, which represents, again, knowledge and power at the top, ignorance and disempowerment at the bottom, which is where most people are unfortunately at. The disempowered, ignorant masses of humanity at the bottom of that symbolic structure, and at the top you have a few people who are in the know and using that knowledge to their own benefit at the expense of everybody else's rights and freedoms. So, what knowledge specifically does occultism constitute and hide from most people? See, this is another thing a lot of researchers don't talk about or get right. What is the occult specifically? When I say it's hidden knowledge, well, what does that mean? What knowledge? Knowledge of what? And here's what the occult is. And I'm telling you this not from book knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you this from first-hand, direct experience. And you can look in all that background on my website. We don't even need to get into all of that here today. Okay? But from first-hand, direct experience, I'm not asking anybody to believe that this is the knowledge of what the occult hides. I'm telling you factually and definitively from being involved. This is the knowledge of the occult. Okay? There's two bodies of knowledge that it comprises and hides from the general public. The first is known as the minor or lesser arcana. Again, that's a Latin word, or maybe possibly Greek origin, that means knowledge. Arcana means knowledge. That's all it means. Okay? It could take on the connotation of arcane knowledge, meaning it's knowledge that not everybody knows. It's been hidden from sight, it's specialized, and it's not common. Okay? So, see, when people refer to it as minor or lesser, that also paints a picture in people's minds connotatively that it means not as important as something else. And that's not what they mean there by that. It means knowledge of the smaller things in the world. Okay? The microcosmic scale of knowledge. Or, as I like to call it, the knowledge of the inner world. The world of the individual, the individuated unit of consciousness, what in the world of the occult teachers have often referred to as the monad, M-O-N-A-D, the one unit of consciousness, okay, which is like a drop in the large ocean of interconnected consciousness. All right? So this is the knowledge of the self, the knowledge of the human mind, the human psyche, and how it operates, what our motivations are, what our deep feelings are, what's going on in the subconscious mind. Okay? The ability to know the self. That's the minor arcana, or the microcosmic occult knowledge. Then there's another body of knowledge that the occult constitutes. And this is the macrocosmic knowledge. It's often called major or greater, the major arcana or the greater arcana. Again, these are just labels. It does not mean that it is more important. It means that it is knowledge of the large things, the macrocosmic world, or what you might term the outer world. Okay? And I put outer in quotes because none of it is outer. It's all ultimately what we are made of. Okay? So, this is the knowledge of natural law, universal, cosmic, moral law. The laws that govern what happens in our entire society, in our living conditions, whether order gets created or whether chaos and evil get created. All right? And also contained in that body of knowledge are the physical sciences as well, because they govern, the laws of dynamics and motion and electromagnetism, etc., and gravity. Those are all contained in that larger body of knowledge as well. Okay, the physical science laws. All right? So that's what the occult is. Now just think about that. Think about that. What's not contained in there? Nothing. Everything. All knowledge is contained within these two groups. This is ancient psychology and ancient science about not only the laws that govern what happens with whole societies, but what happens with physical matter as well. Okay? So, it's all knowledge is contained within these two general groupings of knowledge. Now, then start to ask yourself the question, well, why in God's name would anyone want to hide that? Yeah, because it creates two specific groups of people in the world. Okay? So why has such knowledge been hidden from humanity? Well, very specific reason. It's been hidden deliberately, not by accident, very deliberately, in full knowledge, by the people who do have that knowledge, okay, for a specific purpose. And that purpose is to create and maintain a power differential in the world between the small group of people who holds those bodies of knowledge and the large masses of humanity who are completely ignorant of those two bodies of knowledge. Because the application of that knowledge is power. Knowledge in itself is only potential for power. But when it's applied in our lives, that's when it becomes power. And there's a tiny, tiny group of polymaths. That means people who are extraordinarily knowledgeable about all of those forms of information I just spoke about. And they're using it, they're applying it, and they're applying it to control the people who remain ignorant of it. And if you don't understand that that's going on, you're a very naive human being. And I'm just going to say it just like that. That's going on. That's happening. Definitively. Actually. Okay? Now, when I refer to consciousness throughout this presentation, what do I mean? Because many people have different definitions for this. When I talk about consciousness, I mean the ability to recognize what is happening. The ability to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to what is actually occurring. So again, this is another demystification definition. Okay? We need to take things out of this supernatural realm that's not anchored or not grounded and bring it down to practical understanding. Consciousness is the ability to recognize what's happening within you and around you at any given time or place. Unconsciousness is the reverse. It means you aren't in conscious recognition of the patterns of what's taking place, either within your own internal makeup or in your environment. That's unconsciousness. Okay? So, the expressions for consciousness are thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. Thoughts, emotions, and actions. The three general expressions for consciousness. Those are the way you can make yourself known to anyone or express yourself. That's why I call them the expressions for consciousness. Words are an extension of your thoughts and your emotions. And of course, your actions are the byproduct of your thoughts and emotions. Okay? So, there's two general types of consciousness as expressed through the physiology of the brain. There's the intellect and then the emotion/intuition/creativity. All right? The intellect is what researchers have described as the left brain modality of consciousness, or what you might call the masculine. Okay? We're going to focus a lot on that today. We'll touch on the feminine side as well, because you have to understand the feminine imbalance is where the New Age religion comes from and how it maintains control over the people who are ensnared within that belief system. The left brain consciousness is the intellect, the ability to analyze, okay, the ability to think logically and stay grounded and focused. All right? But we're going to talk about also how this part is what helps us to truly understand and stand within our rights and defend ourselves and defend our rights. Okay? Both of these are critically important to keep in a state of balance. Balance is the key. Okay? And that's what we have to continually go back to as a theme. Balance, integration, synthesis. Not having too much of one side or too much of the other side. We'll talk about what that creates. All right? So, the intellectual capacities comprise the logical abilities, analytical thought, scientific thought, mathematical thought, etc. You get the picture. Okay? It's the series processor. Linear analytical progressions. All right? The parallel processor is that right brain side. That's the feminine component of consciousness. All right? The intuition, the creativity, compassion, nurturing, etc. All right? So it's holistic thought. And you could liken that to a series processor in an electrical model, if you will. All right? Now, when they're balanced, that's where we want to be. We want to be operating on all cylinders when it comes to the brain. And then when we do that, we're connecting in with the heart energy. And that's also then connecting us to right action, which is courage, which we need courage to actually perform in the world. So that happens when both of these capacities are in a perfect state of balance. When they're in a state of imbalance, we have different stages or different degrees of mind control, or what I've called here being inside of polarization dialectics, which we'll talk about what that is, what it means. All right? But essentially, you just need to understand that as the things that push us into one form of imbalance or the other, either masculine imbalance of the left brain or feminine imbalance of the right brain. And again, this is a loose model. Okay? I'm not telling you every single function of logic only happens in the left brain. Not what I'm saying. The neurophysiology is a bit more complicated than all that. This is a simplified model, but it generally holds true as a generalization. Okay? I'm sorry, let me step back one there. Okay? The overuse and chronically staying engaged continually in the intellectual capacities only will lead to certain modalities of behavior and certain expressions in the personality. And those are when that part of the brain and that part of the personality is chronically engaged in without any balance of the feminine side. We get things like rigid skepticism or scientism, as I call it. We get total atheism, the belief that man is the highest power in the universe and there's nothing that governs man. Okay? Which is an extreme form of imbalance, and I don't care who that offends by saying it, if there's atheists in the audience or out there listening on video. Get as offended as you want by that statement. Atheism is extreme left-brain imbalance. Okay? And a lot of people get upset when I attack people in extreme right-brain forms of imbalance. So I piss everybody off. Okay? So also when you're in extreme left brain imbalance, you become like a control freak. And you get people who then also want a lot of control mechanisms in place. And it leads to authoritarianism and ultimately totalitarianism. All right? That's what happens when that part of the brain is chronically dominant. When the right brain part is chronically dominant, which is what leads to beliefs in religion, specifically the New Age movement, all right, we get naivete. People just believing anything, blind belief, religious extremism, and what I call slave think. People being willing to lay down and follow orders and do whatever they're told, regardless of whether it's right or not, and will never stand up and physically defend themselves or their rights. So you could group pacifism into the right brain imbalance as well. Okay? I am all about non-aggression. I live the non-aggression principle. That doesn't mean I'm a pacifist. I think pacifism is deplorable. That means no matter what happens to you, you will never defend yourself. That's what a pacifist is. And that's the ideology of a slave. Okay? So, again, both of these forms of imbalance are what causes the prison to be built in our society. And that's what keeps us in that prison. All right? So, mind control is the mechanism for slavery. That's what you got to take away from that slide. If you're in mind control, if you're in one of those forms of imbalance, you're a perfect slave. And the slave masters love it. That's where they want us. They don't want us in the state of total balance between both of those hemispheres of the brain. Because that's what unlocks the heart, truly, and that's what unlocks the guts. Right action that has to be underlay by courage. Courage to act in the right capacity. And controllers don't want anybody there. They don't want anybody there. Okay? Now, what happens, let's look at a little bit more of the neuroscience behind this. I won't get real technical, just I want to explain the basic structures of the brain. All right? Because this is never taught to us in school, unless you're going to study neuroscience. You know, they never teach us about what comprises us in school. They want to teach you everything about the seemingly external world, but God forbid we know anything about how we work. You know, that's not allowed to be taught. We have three structures within our brain. You could liken it and say we have three brains, one built on top of another. Okay, would be an actually quite accurate model. We have the reptile brain, the mammal brain, and the human brain in that order, from bottom to top. So, the reptile brain, you see it down here, it's the brain stem and the cerebellum. This comprises motor skills. It makes possible our motor skills, our respiration, and survival in general. So this part of the brain governs the fight and flight mode. If we're attacked, we make a decision. Are we going to fight, stand and fight, or are we going to run away? Okay, and then all physical motor skills and respiration, digestion, etc., largely controlled by that portion of the brain. Above it, we have the limbic brain, the limbic system it's called. This makes possible in the physiology our emotions, our emotional responses, and how we feel. At least in the people where it's working normally, and it's not being electrochemically that is malfunctioning. We'll talk about that a bit. Psychopaths also, this part of the brain doesn't work properly. People who are primary psychopaths, often this part of the brain is somehow damaged, and it doesn't actually work to generate the neuropeptides that help us to experience and allow us to experience an emotional reaction and feeling in the body when we take an action toward another person. So that's why a psychopath doesn't feel. They don't have the capacity to. So again, the limbic system largely facilitates emotions. It's called the mammalian brain. Above that, we have the human brain. It's the newest in evolutionary terms, and it is what makes us truly human. It gives us our ability. Again, those hemispheres of the brain, that's what I'm talking about. I'm referring to the neocortex, the highest part of the brain, just underneath the skull cap, okay? And that facilitates and makes possible what we would call higher order human thought in both aspects, intellect and intuition and creativity. So all the things that make us human and separate us from the animal kingdom, those functions are all controlled and governed by the neocortical brain, okay, the higher brain, the human brain. Now, what happens again in the physiology? In the physiology, when we're in left brain masculine imbalance chronically, something happens, all right? The neocortex is intended to be, higher brain or human brain is intended to be the executive command center of the whole brain complex, the whole totality of the brain. When we're in left brain hemispherical imbalance, those executive functions basically shut down in the neocortex and get rerouted, electrochemically rerouted. You could look at it as a rewiring process, electrochemically in the brain. And all of those executive functions are now essentially being run by the R complex, or the reptilian brain. Now, just think about it. Just think about it from a logical perspective. That's exactly what a control freak behaves like. A robot, a reptile, somebody who is completely wrapped up and has to have it a certain way, total rigidity, okay? No compassion, cold-blooded. Cold-blooded, all right? That's what happens from left brain imbalance. And I call this mode of consciousness master think. The belief that you're somebody else's owner. They must do what you command. Okay? Chronic left brain or masculine dominance creates the suppression of the emotion because the limbic system malfunctions with the neocortex. So the other two parts of the brain suffer. These two parts. And this one is what they're running on. It eventually roots us in the reptilian brain. Now, what happens with the opposite form of imbalance when we're in right brain hemispherical imbalance chronically? Something different takes place. And I think most people can extrapolate. Slave think happens. And what happens is, instead of, again, the whole and balanced neocortex acting as the executive command center of the whole brain, those functions, the neocortex suffers from the chronic imbalance toward the right hemisphere, and then the executive functions of the brain get shunted or rerouted to the limbic brain, the midbrain. Now, you have a person who's running purely on emotions. Their emotions rule them, not the other way around. They're not really in control of their emotions. Okay? They're, neurotic. They're all over the place. They're ungrounded. All right? Chronic right brain or feminine dominance creates the suppression of the survival instinct, and it eventually roots us in the mammalian brain, where we are ruled again by our emotions. So that's how brain imbalance works. Again, the key is the balance between the hemispheres to keep the higher brain functions working on all cylinders, both the intellect and the compassion, creative, intuitive right brain. What form of imbalance is the New Age movement? It's right brain imbalance. It puts people largely into what I call slave think, which is why it's so dangerous. Because you have other people who are brainwashed by governmental agencies, and military and paramilitary organizations, and they become master-like in their consciousness, okay? And then you give everybody else religion in one form or another, and they become people who go along as willing slaves. And that's how a totalitarian society is born and maintained, through brain imbalance. So, when I talk about mind control, I'm really talking about giving people false choices. And that's what the New Age movement is. It's a false choice. It's just another religion. People don't think of it as a religion, but they're being duped into accepting just another religion. Okay? The word dialectic, it's a philosophical term. Not all dialectics are bad. That's why I've qualified this term, and I'm calling it polarizing dialectics, or what I call polarization dialectics. The dialectical approach puts people into one form of imbalance or another, okay, and holds it there. The word dialectic comes from Greek, the Greek and Latin. The Greek preposition dia, which is the first part of the word dialectic, means through or by way of. And then the Latin noun lectus means choice. So dialectic means by way of choice. By way of choosing, we're going to hold you in a place that keeps you back from where you want to go, or sends you to a place you don't want to go, as depicted in that slide right there. Okay? So this is one form of polarization dialectics. Are you Republican or Democrat? Are you conservative or liberal? Okay? What form of slavery and murder do you prefer? Because it's all the same thing. There is no real choice here. All polarization dialectics are false choices that all lead to the same place. Okay? Once again, the New Age movement is another form of a polarization dialectic. I like to call it the catch-all for it's a religion catch-all when these other cultural religions fail. When that net goes out and it fails to catch everybody and some get through that net, this is the catch-all for the people that go through this net. Okay? That's all the New Age movement is. And I'm going to explain a lot of the deceptions one by one. It's another false choice. It's just another polarizing dialectic to keep us away from truth. It's another religion. So mind-controlled dialectics, how do they specifically work? All right? Well, there's two overarching methodologies. Again, government is what holds people in the left brain part of the dialectic. All right? So this is the control system that's been built up all around us. For the overly left brain people, that's the institutional body that's there for them. To get them involved and get them working for that left brain, compassionless, control freak system. All right? It works through left brain imbalance and it binds out of the way the right brain. People who buy into this religion are largely trapped in the left brain and largely have no right brain capacities left. And therefore they're operating in master think, and therefore they're operating from the reptilian brain, the base brain. All right? It is based upon the erroneous, completely false, dogmatic belief or religion that there is such a thing as authority. Some people are masters, some are slaves. Some people get to issue commands while other people have a moral obligation to obey those commands. Okay? That's all it is. Authority vested in certain humans, which gives them special quote-unquote rights that other people don't have. Left brain imbalance eventually creates psychopathic tendencies, meaning the inability to feel the repercussions of your actions toward another human being. All right? Leading some to the belief that they have, quote, rights to rule over others through violence. That's what this ultimately leads to, this form of imbalance. Now, the right brain imbalance is exactly the opposite. It does exactly the opposite. And it works through religion. It works through the other forms of religion. You could say, I could have put on this slide the left brain religions, government and scientism. Okay? Really might have been more accurate. And now the right brain religions of cultural religion and the New Age movement. Remember that slide with the 4 religions on it? You could apply that to this section. Okay? It works through the right brain and binds the left brain. Logical functions are bound out of the way. They can't get involved when religious beliefs are entrenched. Okay? If we give up our... this is the poster child here. You got to imagine the poster. Imagine those two meditating young man and woman in the first slide. Okay? We'll make them the poster children. And here's the quote for all religion. If we give up our free will and personal responsibility to perform right action for ourselves to some deity, government, guru, extraterrestrial race, or mystical force, we'll give away that responsibility, and those things will all come and rescue us from ourselves. They'll come and save us any day now. We just keep waiting. Okay? And, it's the same thing with any religion. It's all externalization of power to some other force or entity, and that entity is going to come and rescue us from our own ignorance. Yeah. Don't you know that's how it works? It works that way. It really does. Okay? I mean, it's a deplorable ideology of a child, and that's insulting to children even for me to say. You know, most children have better sense than that until they get indoctrinated and become an ignorant adult. So this right brain imbalance through religion creates blind acceptance and collectivist groupthink. And it leads to a condition in which willing followers will readily submit to authority. So you have to understand, this is how the control system works. The slavery system works by creating masters on one side and slaves on another. And everybody is a form of a master and a slave. So no matter how much authority somebody has, they have a boss. They have some person that they're following orders from and answering to. So they're a slave at a lower level. Okay? And, you know, that's what it is. It's a world where everybody's simultaneously a form of a master over somebody else, yet a slave to someone else as well. And that means you're in a prison until we break that cycle. And that cycle is only going to be broken with truth and balance. That's it. Not by looking to anything outside of ourselves to come in and rescue us from the situation we created. And we, through our ignorance, perpetuate. So what happens when we have both these things in place? Well, as I've already said, when you have both of these things working in the mind, and you believe in both of this forms of nonsense, government and religion, you have a mind in chains. Mind all bound up, nice and tightly padlocked, and the key's been thrown into the ocean. And that's where most people are at. You know, believe me, whatever you think of me, no, I'm not naive. I know where the human dynamic is. I know where it's at. I look at it honestly. I'm not a pessimist and say, oh God, there's no chance we could turn this around. But I'm honest about where we're really at as a species, and it's not good. It's not. We have such a long way to go. It's not even funny how much more work we have to do. Which is why I do this. I'm trying to create more teachers. We need more people who understand this and are willing to teach it to others. When we have a mind in chain on a collective scale, we get a world in chains. As above, so below. As below, so above. As occurs in the microcosmic world, becomes reflected in the macrocosmic world. That which goes on at the very small scale of existence creates the condition on the very large scale of existence. That's known as the law of correspondence, and it is part of natural law. And until we change it here, don't expect it to change there. Till you get this out of the cage, till you get this out of the chains, that will remain in the chains. Know it. Don't believe it. Know it. Know it like you know your own name, or you know the sun's coming up in the morning on the eastern horizon. Know it that well. Okay? That's not going to change till this changes. And abandons all false belief systems. Not just the ones that you really don't like. All of them. So government as a term, again, going back to the etymological derivation of the real intended meaning of English words, and I won't belabor this much, it comes from the Latin verb gubernare, the first part. Now again, there's no V in classically rendered Latin. In non-classical Latin, you might see this rendered as gubernare with a V. But in original ancient Latin, there was no V. So it was gubernare. Again, the word gubernatorial is related to a governor, is what that means. A gubernatorial election is a governor election. So gubernare means to control as a verb in Latin. And then the Latin noun mens mentis means mind. And yes, this is where the English suffix ment is derived. It is derived from the Latin noun mens mentis. So many people hotly debate that, hotly contest that, and tell me I don't know my Latin derivations. I don't care how many people tell me that. I'm telling you, that's where it came from, and the reason they chose it is because the philosophers and the people who were linguists and were word magicians, who over time and over patterns of usage and patterns of actual migration of human beings as well. The polymaths of the ancient world, okay, who came up with English over many hundreds of years, they likened the philosophy of the ancients to the introduction of the origins of the English language. So they were using the principle of correspondence and mentalism. All right? The natural law principles of how we create. We create conditions through how we think. So they took the noun for the mind in Latin, in classical Latin, mens mentis, and they applied it to the suffix that was going to mean the state of or the condition of existence, which is what ment means in English as a suffix. Because they know that for that condition to exist, it has to exist here first, in the mind, which is what the noun mens mentis. So the condition of control must happen through the control of the mind. That's why it's to control the mind. The state of control manifests when the mind is controlled. That's why they structured the word that way deliberately. And many people will still refuse it. What doesn't matter how clarified I offer that definition. They will still refuse to accept that's where this word came from. Refuse it all you want. It's not going to change the truth. That's where it came from. Okay? The word government literally, from its etymological origins, literally means mind control. Okay? Now, what is government? It's a religion based in this concept called authority. Authority is a religion that in turn comes from the notion that certain people have the right to rule over others, which is known as jurisdiction. Now, that comes from Latin, okay? The Latin noun jus juris, or just juris, if you want to anglicize it, but jus juris, and it wouldn't have even been written with a J. I really should have spelled it I-U-S, comma, and then the genitive would be I-U-R-I-S, classically. But I put the J there to let you understand how it's connected to jurisdiction. Jus juris means law. And the verb dictere, jurisdiction, right? Diction is speech in English. It comes from dictere, to speak or to say in Latin. So we put them together. Jurisdiction literally means to say what the law is. The law is this because I say it is. Not because I've discovered it in the natural realm and understand how it operates, like gravity or thermodynamics or electromagnetism or any other force in nature. And the laws of morality can be discovered with the same discovery methodologies that the physical laws can be discovered through. You know? No, we're not going to discover what the law of nature is. We're going to make up the laws of man, and they're going to be that way because we say so. We just decree it, and then it is so. And that's how man's law works. You know, you can make a wrong into a right and a right into a wrong with the stroke of a pen, and that makes it moral or immoral? You don't know that? Yeah, it can work like that. Yeah. You know, if my sarcasm is a little biting, it's because I find the notion so utterly ridiculous that I can't even believe modern human beings could still be at a point where they believe in this crap. You know, it's amazing to me that adult human beings still believe that nonsense and think somehow because it's written in law, it's moral. And because it's forbade by law, it's immoral. You don't understand there's a difference between legality and morality. You're not an adult. Not yet, anyway. So, authority is an illusion that can only come about when the mind is ill. The mind must be sick for authority to be believed in. It is the result of a diseased psyche, and it is based entirely in violence. The modality of behavior that underlies the belief in authority is violence. Violence, which I stand against in all of its forms. Because violence is what paves the way to slavery, which I also stand against in all of its forms. Authority is built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief or religion, false religion, let's qualify it, that some people are the masters who have the moral right to issue commands, while others are their slaves who have a moral obligation to obey the commands set by the masters. That's what authority is. It's not my belief system about what it is. That's what it actually is in reality. And it does not exist in nature. This concept only exists in the mind of someone who is mentally sick. What it really is, ladies and gentlemen, is slavery. We need to stop euphemizing things. See, this is another part of politically correct speech. This is another part of new agey speech. Okay? I'm not here not to insult your delicate sensibilities, folks. I'm here to tell you the truth about what's going on in the world and how we need to change it by an act of our will. Unless you want to go in deeper bondage. Okay? Because this is where we're at. And we need to stop calling it something else. It's not government. It's not authority. It's not jurisdiction. It's slavery. And I will not euphemize the term. I'm going to call it what it is, and I'm going to tell you it needs to end, and we are the people who need to end it. What needs to be understood, and again, this is really the deep understanding of natural law, the deep understanding of who we all are. This is the end of the occult. You start out the occult in ignorance, hoodwinked, blindfolded, not understanding the world, certainly not understanding yourself. And if you go through the path of occult knowledge, you come out on the other side understanding this deeper than anything else, because this is the real knowledge of existence, truth, and reality. This is what a conscious being fully understands as part of natural law, and it's what all religions are there to hide, to mask, to keep us back from the understanding of, that we are sovereign. We are sovereign beings. Not some, not most, all of us are sovereign. And guess what? I'm telling everyone in the audience, everyone listening out there, yes, I'm telling you, you are sovereign. Whether you understand it, whether you accept it or not, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't matter whether you don't want it to be that way, it is that way. Not because I say it's that way, because we are all sovereign in nature. The condition of slavery does not exist in nature. It exists in conditions that are created by the mind. And that can be undone once those belief patterns are undone. It does not exist in nature. Slavery is inherently illegitimate at all times and at all places, anywhere in the universe. This is the actual condition of all beings in the universe. Okay, what sovereign means, etymologically, it comes from the Latin adverb super, okay? And again, P, linguistically, can be interchanged with a V. So we would get suver or sover, okay? And that means above. Super means above, all right? And the Latin noun regnum. Regnum comes from rex regis in Latin, which means king. And regnum is the rule of the king, all right? Or simply rulership or control. The condition of control or the condition of rule. All right? So what does that then mean? You put them together. Super, above, regnum, rulership or control. It means above rulership or control. Meaning no one is above me, ruling me, telling me what I may or may not do, provided I'm not doing violence to someone else. Provided I'm not attempting to take someone else's rights and property. Okay? A sovereign is one who is above the rulership or control of another. That's it. That's all it means. That's all it ever has meant. It is one who is not a subject and not a slave to any other being. The word sovereign means not a slave. Now, how many people knew, discounting, I don't want to see people who are already familiar with my work. For those who are not previously familiar with my work, how many people knew, coming into this room today, that the word sovereign literally means not a slave, by a show of hands? 2 people. 3, I'm sorry. Unacceptable. Okay? That's mind control. That's how mind control works. Through the obfuscation of the real meaning of words. And most people are totally unstudied in the origin of words. And that's why they don't even know themselves. They don't even know what the words they speak mean in reality. And people will try to tell you sovereign means something other than that. That's all it ever has meant and means now. It means not a slave. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? I am not a slave. And you want to know something else? No one in this room is a slave. You want to know something else? No one watching this video is a slave. No one on earth is a slave. Not in nature. Maybe in the diseased condition that we exist in, we have created that condition. But it is inherently illegitimate at all times and places, and nothing can ever legitimize it in reality. The New Age movement is one of the religions, but a powerful and growing force as a religion that is holding us back from that understanding. It is the politically correct variant of religion. And many other researchers call it the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine, meaning the real spiritual goal that you want to get to understand spirituality in reality, what it really is to be an awake spiritual being. Okay? This is the thing. Just before it is the trap place, just before you get to that gets you going around in a circle like a hamster on a wheel. Okay? You go into this little roundabout. Okay? And you just keep driving. You're not really going anywhere and you think you are. The last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. The word cul-de-sac literally means a dead-end street or a loop street. Usually that's what they're in the form of. They really go nowhere. They don't have any outlet. They may have one in and out. Okay? And it's there to slow down or to retard the movement, the flow of the transportation. Now some people will say, well, it's there to speed up transportation somewhere else. Yeah, it is. For the people who want to put you in the cul-de-sac, it's to speed up their movement where they want to go, which is to be the controllers, to be the gods of this world. Okay? And they want us in that cul-de-sac. That's right where they want us. So they lead us all into there, say, hey, yeah, we got something else. It's not religion. It's totally different. It's completely, what this is doing, it's doing the complete opposite, when in fact it's just another dialectic, doing the same exact thing. Calling it something else, euphemizing it, calling it something else, the end result is the same. And they got people in this trap like you would not believe. I call it the last religion before the gold mine. Okay? Instead of the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine, the last religion before you actually make alchemical gold in the mind. Alright? I call it a feel-good, pseudo-spiritual, dead-end deception, or series of deceptions, which retard the true awakening process. It's there to get you to believe you're awake, when in fact, you're not really there yet. You know? So, the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine, or the last religion before the gold mine, pick your choice of colorful alternatives. Let's get into some of the deceptions, okay? And then we'll pick those up after the break. I'll do about an hour and a half of these. We'll pause for lunch, then an hour and a half break for lunch, and then we'll continue the deceptions on the other side, whatever I don't get to in this segment. So I'm going to go through 15 of these. And now, again, many other researchers have often said, rightfully, and it's not New Age nonsense or hokum, what I'm about to say, don't bring up a problem unless you are going to talk about the solution. I firmly believe that one. I don't think that's a New Age deception. You want to talk about deep problems that exist? Have some way out of them. Have some form of balance for the negative. Don't ignore the negative. That's the first deception. First deception of the New Age movement is, ignore the negative. Don't even talk about it. Well, you know what? We got to talk about it. We got to analyze it. We got to go deep inside of it. Understand all the aspects of it. Okay? But you want to understand the solution as well. Because that's going to bring balance to that darkness. You're going to shine the light on the darkness, and then you're going to say, here's what we can do about it. The methods we can actually take action, and just understanding it is taking action to counteract it. See, the mental process of really deeply understanding the problem and getting down to the causal factors that have created the condition, created the manifestation of the problem, that is the knowledge that you need to correct the problem. So what I'm going to do here today, when I present these 15 New Age deceptions, is I'm going to counterbalance each one. After I present each deception, I will have a New Age correction to the deception and explain the deep, real, streetwise spiritual variant of this misguided, imbalanced teaching that has been taken up and grafted onto the New Age movement. All right? So that's going to be the pattern. Now, for people who may have seen me do this lecture or the previous version of it before, we have a little comic relief in here in the form of the bullshit buzzer or the bullshit button. It's like a game show tone where I'm going to beep each one of these deceptions. I just want to show you here today, went out and got an actual bullshit button. So, before I start this section, I'm going to put it right there, and I'll be able to hit that when I buzz each one of these. So, the first New Age deception is ignore the negative. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I don't want to talk about that. That stuff upsets me. That stuff makes me nervous. That stuff makes me fearful. So let's just sweep it under the rug. Okay, let's not get into that. We don't need to upset people with talking about the negative stuff that's going on. Oh, don't they already know it? No. Most people actually don't. Most people are loath to look at it. And people in this movement are doing a grave disservice to humanity by not talking about the negative things that are happening in our world. A grave disservice. Because what they're doing is perpetuating human ignorance. Let me tell you something, folks. Ignorance is never empowering. Ignorance is never positive. Okay? Ignorance is disempowering and negative. So ignoring the negative isn't doing anybody any service or creating any empowerment. Why? Because you don't want to tell people what's really happening. You don't want them to feel bad about what we've allowed to go on in our name and in our presence and in our midst. Oh, because it makes people feel a little bit guilty, right? Maybe they're not involved in counteracting it or coming up with a solution. Well, you know what? Maybe people do need to feel bad if they're not involved in that process. Maybe that little bit of guilt is what they need to be feeling. Maybe that's the proper emotional response to not doing anything, is to feel guilty about your cowardice and inaction. Maybe that's why the emotion of guilt exists, so we can feel that in the physiology. And then maybe that feeling will give us a little kick in the ass to get up off our asses and start doing something positive. Start to get involved in the solution. Start doing what we came here to do. As spiritual warriors who most of us have gotten off the path and off the track. Because we've gotten into the cul-de-sac and we're running on the hamster wheel. So there's nothing empowering about refusing to look at what's there. That only creates more negativity and more ignorance. Many New Age deceivers want to try to convince people, try to convince those that listen to them, that what they're really doing is you're giving power, you're giving your power away by looking at something that's harmful or negative, just by putting your attention on it, becoming aware of its existence. No, you're not. You're empowering yourself by knowing what's going on. That's, again, the definition for consciousness. The ability to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to what is taking place within you and in your environment. That is what it means to be conscious. Well, if you're not doing that, you're unconscious. So the New Age community tells people you should never pay attention to or talk about anything that's negative. The catchphrase, if you want to look at it as the poster child for the ignorance of the negative, I like to say ignorance. I think it hammers the term home. Ignorance, it loses its punch. It loses its power. But ignorance, they fully hear the word ignore in there when you say it that way. Then it takes on the full connotative meaning, the really intended meaning, which means ignore what's going on. Hey, if it's unpleasant, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I certainly don't want to tell others about it. Why? Oh, if it's a bummer, you're bringing me down. Bringing me down? I'm telling you what's going on, man. You want to remain ignorant about what's happening around you? That's what's going to bring you down. I'll just ignore it. It'll go away on its own. How's that working out for you? Yeah, well, do that when you get really sick. Do that when there's a physical problem. It works out real well. Yeah. You know what that's called?
Bullshit.
It's called putting your head in the sand. I faked it out on that, didn't I? It's called putting your head in the sand like an ostrich. And you'll note the body position, please. Because when you have your head in the sand, your ass is in the air. And we know what follows that. Ultimately, ignoring the negative is 100% bullshit. Okay? It's bullshit. All it does is disempower. It doesn't empower anybody. You can be told about the negative things that are going on in a tempered way, in a way to make you knowledgeable about them. So that what you're doing is you're going to recognize the symptom. See, because all the negative things that are happening, they're not the causal factor. They're the things that happen as a result of the causal factor in mind. But unless you know that, it's like, look, you get a disease, right? You're going to become aware of its presence by the symptom. Then if you just try to treat the symptom, you're not curing a thing. You're not really affecting change. You're just, treating the outside aspect, the manifestation of the problem. But you then go to the causal factor, you treat it from there, you're actually bringing balance to that dis-ease condition, and you're curing it. So let's start with the first correction. There's a big difference between nescience and ignorance. And that's what ignoring the negative, ignorance, okay? It's ignorance. It's not nescience. So what we have to do is delineate, make some discernment between these two words. Now, most people have never heard of the word nescience. Again, discounting the people who are already familiar with my material. How many people have ever heard the term nescience? 0. Oh, okay, a couple in the back. Okay, a couple of people. Now, think about that. It's not a word that's thrown around in colloquial English that much. I recognize that. But to never have heard of this word, there's a reason. There's a reason people don't want you to even hear about certain words or know their meanings. Because the understanding of the real meaning of words is empowerment. All right? There's two contextual definitions of not knowing something. Two forms of not knowing. One form of not knowing is through no fault of our own. We cannot know something, and it's not our fault that we didn't know it. Then there's another variant of not knowing that is directly attributable to the actions of the person who remains in that state of not knowing. Meaning they are fully responsible for not knowing it. Okay? Nescience is the first form of not knowing. And this is the kind that is of no fault of our own or whoever else doesn't know. It comes from the Latin verb nesciere. Now, sciere in Latin means to know. Okay, you can look it up in any Latin reader, Latin dictionary. It's where we get the word science from. Science comes from scio, sciere. All right? To know, to understand. Nescio, we're tacking on a prefix at the beginning of the word. Ne in Latin is the negative, the negation of the term you're tacking it on to. Okay? So nescio, nesciere, means to not know, to not understand. But there is a connotative definition as nescio, nesciere is used in Latin, in classical Latin. The connotative usage of nesciere means that you didn't know because the knowledge of that thing was completely unattainable in your presence and your environment. There was no way you could have known. Okay? So in other words, if we burned every book, every piece of information on how to make ceramics, let's say. God forbid we did that in this town. Okay? But let's just say there was no ability to understand ceramics or ceramic making, okay? And you eradicated everybody who knew it, how to do it, and you eradicated all written, all digitally stored information. I understand in today's day and age that would be a tall order, but just let's say you could get that done, hypothetically. Right? Anybody who is still remaining in the world in that condition could not be faulted for not understanding how to make ceramics because the knowledge isn't present anymore. They might be able to start experimenting and come up with it again and eventually over time. But to not know at that point how to do that, no one could be faulted for it. You couldn't say, hey, that information is out there because it wouldn't be out there. That's nescience. Then the person could be said to be nescient of that thing. You are now nescient in ceramic making because that info doesn't exist anymore. Conversely, if the knowledge is present, you're ignoring it. You are ignorant of it. Okay? Now, again, you might not want to learn a certain thing, so you might deliberately say, well, I don't need to know how to do that. So you could ignore how to make ceramics, okay? It wouldn't be causing harm as a result of willfully choosing not to get involved in that specific activity, just using it as an example. But there are certain things you could ignore, and it's creating harm. Especially when you ignore the iniquities and inequities that are taking place all around us in our world. Then that form of ignorance is highly harmful, actually. Not only to yourself, but to everyone around you. All right? So ignorance comes from the Latin verb ignorare, which means to not know, even though necessary information is present and available, because you yourself are making a conscious free will decision to deliberately, willfully refuse or disregard that information. That's what ignorance is. Now, my question to the audience after presenting that the distinguishing characteristics of these two forms of not knowing is our society a nescient society or is it an ignorant society? By a show of hands, with all of the information that exists around us in the digital age, is our society nescient? No one in the room. How many people think our society exists in a state of ignorance? Yeah.
It's both.
Is it? But again, is it? Is this information not already unveiled? Is it not already out there? I'm not the only one who knows this, obviously. It can't be. I would not have been able to receive this information if I was the only one who knew it. It would have just magically manifested. It's obviously out there in the world. I searched for it hard enough. You know, I wanted to know. I didn't want to be ignorant anymore. And it took years to get to that place. Years of suffering. Hardcore suffering. To get to the place where I wanted to know. And maybe that suffering is what led me to the depth of wanting to plumb the depths of knowledge and really understand what was really going on here. You know, the experiences I had in my past let me in, got a little peek in the door, you could say. of what was really going on, who was really controlling things. But, I stayed in that level of ignorance for even a long time after that, and had to come out of that through suffering hard enough. Trial by fire. When you have a lot of calcification in something, sometimes fire is the only way it's going to be broken down. That was my path. I call it the way of maximum pain. Not necessary. My own ego made that necessary. But it doesn't have to be that way. I try to do this also to help alleviate people having to go down that same path, and us having to go down that same path as a whole culture, as a whole society. We'll have a whole question and answer session, and we'll go in depth with questions. But we're an ignorant society, unfortunately. Seeing the negative for what it actually is creates an ability within us to steel ourselves against it. Now, to steel yourself against something means you're strengthening and empowering yourself so that the effect of that negative thing is not going to have an impact, or certainly it's going to lessen the impact on you, on the effect it will have upon you. All right? And if we know enough, not only will we steel ourselves against the harmful effect, we may even be able to completely avert the effect. So in natural law tradition, the occult traditions that spoke of natural law, many of them talked about this as the law of rhythm, or the law of compensation. That knowledge was a way to counterbalance the oncoming harmful effects of having remained ignorant to something. So, you look at it like disease again, right? Physical disease, right? You didn't know, hey, you're taking in this poison in this food, right? Well, now if you study about the poison in food, in a lot of our food, and you get off of that poison and you stop taking it in, the health benefits come, and the negative health effects of the diluted and polluted food go away. So you start taking in pure, high-density nutrition food, and you get off of the low-density toxic food, you're going to reverse health conditions, and you're not going to get sick. You're steeling yourself against the negative condition of illness, and you're averting those possible effects entirely that would have ordinarily manifested and resulted as a result of taking in bad food. This is only logical. Okay? There's nothing mystifying about what I'm going to talk about here today, folks. It's called common sense knowledge. All right? But yet, so many people in the New Age community believe we're somehow going to magically correct the human condition without talking about all the negative stuff that's going on in our world. Well, again, not possible. Not only is that not going to happen, that correction to the human condition is not just going to magically manifest like that. It can not happen like that. It is not possible. According to law, it is not possible. Okay? Only knowledge can take us out of the condition that we're in. Ignoring the negative is perpetuating ignorance, which only gets you more of the same, which is chaos and disorder and more slavery. So again, the people around us who are completely ignorant, and people say it's not my job to wake them up, well again, good luck with that position. Because these are the people who are creating that condition through their hypnotic condition, their ignorance. Okay? And the people who insist that the concept of ignoring the negative is somehow right, they're in this position. They're not really awake. They're still asleep and think they're awake. Refusing to look at critical information about what's going on within us and around us just because it makes you feel uncomfortable or fearful or frightened or scared, okay? And I grant you, it's disturbing. Believe me, the things I know about what's going on in this world would literally keep a lot of people up at night. Literally. And believe me, people who I know who have been through way more than me, you might not even want to know some of their stories.
That's right.
Because trust me, you'll have nightmares. Okay, and I'm not saying you need to go into that level of extremity. You need to understand, you need to be a generalist and understand what's going on and be able to teach that information to other people to help bring them out of their ignorance. The part of the problem is most of us don't want to talk about the negative with others because then, oh, he's the guy who brings me down and says all this negative stuff that's going on. Well, you got to be that person is what I'm saying. You have to take that cross, bear it, carry it, and do it. Refusing to do that, you're ensuring more slavery is going to result. Ensuring. It can only happen that way. It's a natural law of existence. So just because we may be uncomfortable with how it is or scared even, and guess what? Courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving forward with right action in spite of the presence of fear. You think nothing can frighten me? Absolutely untrue. But you know what? I'm going to move forward with right action in the face of that fear. Feel it, let it move through me and still act. That's what courage is. It's not that there's no fear present. It's that you're giving fear the double finger and saying, bring it on. It doesn't matter. I'll feel it and I'll deal with it. And I'll still act. So, willfully choosing to remain in a place where we completely ignore what's really going on, that's negative. That is unconsciousness. That has nothing to do with being conscious or so-called awake. Another part of the ignorance of the negative is this concept that I believe I've coined this term, emotional mind control, or what I like to call heart control. Now, heart control works a couple different ways. Emotional mind control. It's why a lot of people will dismiss my message. And guess what? People will say, well, if someone's not listening to your message, maybe you should adjust the way you're presenting it. No. Untrue. Everybody can go and present however they want. If you don't like the way I present this information, please, by all means. You can even take all my slides. I don't care. You want to present this? Take all the slides. They're all available on my site. None of this is mine. I maintain no copyright. I don't care. You want to represent my exact presentation? Go do it. I'm not coming after you. I'm not going to sue you or take you into court because you want to teach people what they need to learn. Okay? This information is not mine. It belongs to the world. It is your birthright. It is the human birthright to understand what's going on around us. Okay? So, people will say, you should present this like this. No, you should present it like that. I'm going to present it how I damn well please, because it's my presentation. You want to present it differently? Please do so. Okay? So, but a lot of people will say, well, this such and such person's not going to want to hear it because of how you say it. Well, tough. Then they don't get it. Then someone else will have to reach them. That's it. And that's what I do this for. You think it's important for people to understand this? I'm going to teach it to the semi-adults out there who are ready to become adults, who are ready to truly take responsibility for themselves and understand, and then go out and teach. So I'm not doing this for the person who are so under mind control that they can't hear the truth in what I'm saying. I'm not the person who's going to reach them. I'm not pretending to be. That was never my intent. My intent is to make other teachers, to help to inspire other people to become teachers. I can't make you in anything. You have to choose that. But my intent is to inspire people to teach this information. And therefore, we'll have a whole lot of people telling people the truth about what's going on out there. Okay? So getting back to this concept of emotional mind control, I don't care how many times or in what kind of sweet hypnotic tones the attractive newscaster tells you that 2 + 2 = 5, and the seemingly crazy Alex Jones type is going to scream out there in total masculine forcefulness, it equals 4, it equals 4, you're in danger, people are telling you it equals 5 and it doesn't, they're lying to you. I don't care how harsh, nasty, or unpleasant that guy sounds, he's still telling you the truth. Okay? I don't care how many times you hear a lie from someone who dresses up the lie nice and sweet and takes it out on a date on a Saturday night before they present it to you. Okay? Or how many times the crazy person on the corner that seems like they're schizophrenic, okay, is going to, whip out some cosmic wisdom, and you look at them like, oh my God, how did that come out of that dude's mouth? Truth remains truth, no matter how it is presented. Lies remain lies, no matter how well they are dressed up.
That's right.
It still equals 4, folks. It still equals 4. Okay? And this is deliberately part of me trying to explain to somebody how this dynamic works. Okay? Deliberately saying it this harshly. That's why I tell you, you got to put the reaction aside. Reaction to truth is just that. It's a reaction. It's a program that's running. If you're going to gauge veracity, you have to run the information through a filtration process. And if it comes out on the other side as good and true, then it's right. And you need to do the same thing for the well-dressed lie. Hey, this newscaster's telling me this is how it is. Well, he's a very well-dressed guy with this suit and tie, and his hair's so nice and so nicely coiffed. How could he be lying to me? He's telling me this corporation and this government agency has my best interests in mind, and Obama's going to rescue all of us. So it must be true, because look at him, he's such a well-groomed gentleman. That bearded guy with the long hair was raving on about mind control. That's all. Maybe that can't be true. This is how emotional mind control works. We need to come out of that dynamic. Okay? Truth remains truth no matter what form it comes to us in, no matter how it looks at first, no matter how it feels at first. All right, let's move on to the next deception. New Age deception number 2, never get angry. Anger is bad. We should never get upset. We should never get angry at anybody else. Anger is to be purged. It's to be buried deep down inside and never felt. If you're angry, that's a sign that somehow you're not in control, that somehow you're not enlightened, that somehow you're not aware, you're not emotionally mature. Okay? There is proof that when I say I was a fan of The Incredible Hulk from when I was very, very young, there's the proof. Okay? That's me, I think, at age 4 or 5, probably 5. And that's Christmas Day back in the late 70s. And I got an Incredible Hulk action doll that you pumped him up with a pump, an air pump, like a ball pump, and he came. You put him inside of a cage, and when you pumped him up, he broke the whole cage. And I played with it constantly. But this was my favorite action superhero. Okay, the Incredible Hulk. I didn't care for Superman. He was a little too status quo for me. I thought Spider-Man was kind of cool. Batman, could take him or leave him. But the Hulk was my man, okay? And there was a reason for that. Intuitively, when I read the comics or I watched the cartoons, what I recognized is there's a reason he's so mad. And you know what? He's right to be that mad, because why was he always getting mad? He wasn't just randomly getting mad. It wasn't just like, off the cuff, let me just freak out and throw a tantrum. That's not why the Hulk got mad. The Hulk got mad because people wouldn't recognize the first. The people all around him wouldn't recognize the first and most important law of morality. I should say the first and most important inherent human right under natural law. And that is the right to be left alone. The right to be left alone when you are not doing anything to harm someone. That is the first right of a human being. And no one would respect the Hulk's right to be left alone. And so his catchphrase was, "Don't make me angry. You won't like me when I'm angry." right? The Lou Ferrigno series of the Hulk on TV, that was his big catchphrase, which I watched faithfully. Again, in the late 70s growing up. Intuitively, I recognized that principle, even at a very young age. And that's why I liked him as a hero. Plus, for people who are aware of my work with colors and frequencies, he's green. And I'm sure they didn't color him like that by accident. I'm sure whoever really came up with it also was using some occulted knowledge about frequencies. You know, green is the color of balance. Green is the color of the heart. Green is the color of the center of things. You know, in the Indus Valley chakra system, the Anahata chakra is the heart chakra, and it's a green 6-petaled flower symbol to represent the heart. The heart energy is green. Nature is green energy. You know, the best foods for you are the chlorophyll-rich green foods. Okay? It's a balancing factor. It's a balancing energy and influence. And what the New Age movement really wants to do is they want to destroy our inner Hulk. That is what it's there to do. It's to turn the Hulk into this. It's to take the Hulk aspect that exists within each of us, or I should say, should exist within each of us. Not there to be brought out and wielded at all times and places. No, it's a tool that needs to be in the tool set. Anger is there for a reason, or you would not be able to experience it, ladies and gentlemen. When it is used in its proper role, anger is there so that you can motivate yourself through that seemingly negative emotion to inspire yourself to take right action to address and bring balance to injustice. That is what anger exists for. And it is there to be felt in the physiology when injustice is present. Not permanently, but there to say, here's my reaction to this. There's a reason that makes me angry. It makes me angry because what's happening is not right. And therefore, I'm going to use that anger to motivate myself. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm not going to let it make me sick. But again, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to let it move through me, and then I'm going to do something with it. Okay? So, the New Age deception to all of this as a movement. Not every individual. Again, please, don't take what I'm saying here as total blanket statements, right? These are generalities. And I'm not saying I'm making 100% blanket statements when it comes to everybody involved in this movement. As a whole, in general, the New Age movement teaches that anger is always a negative emotion and that somehow we should all seek to purge it from our makeup in all of its forms. As a generality, yes, the New Age movement does teach that. Okay? And you know what that is? It's bullshit. Okay? It's bullshit. You're not really doing anybody a disservice by teaching them that an emotion for which there is a valid reason for it to exist should somehow be purged. It's kind of like the ego. You know, I could make another deception. You know, the ego needs to be purged. There's another New Age deception. The ego is a tool. The ego is how, again, I know that if I need a little bit of liquid, I pick this glass up to my mouth and take a sip. I don't try to pour it down your mouth. That's what the ego is there for, to delineate between the monads of consciousness. All right? The ego out of control, where it has set up and taken control of the whole house, that's what needs to be tempered and possibly even purged. The ego is always going to be there as long as you are inside of the physical universe, incarnating to have experience here in the physical domain. The ego is not there to be purged. It's part of you. Okay? Again, we could, split hairs. What do you mean by ego? Well, ego as somebody in totally identified consciousness, yeah, that's not healthy. Totally identified with the role or your job or your social status or whatever. That's ego. Now, when I say ego, I mean people who are so deeply identified and they're so addicted to their behavioral programming that it's very calcified and very difficult to break somebody from that pattern of behavior through that calcified belief. That's what I mean by ego. And yeah, that does need to be purged. But to go back to never get angry, let's look at its correction. Some streetwise spirituality now. While non-righteous anger and unchanneled anger, they're counterproductive to individual development, and those forms of anger are also counterproductive to our own collective efforts to bring about positive change in the world. Yes, that's absolutely true. Okay, so bullying, just freaking out on people for no reason, not being in control of your own emotions and letting anger rule you, okay, all bad forms of anger. All counterproductive forms of anger. Right? Not the kind of anger I'm talking about. So non-righteous anger, unchanneled anger. Agreed, they could go. We could do without those. They only really make us sick and cause harm to us and other people. While that's true, righteous indignation, which is the form of anger I'm talking about, when it is channeled productively, again, you don't want to dwell even in righteous indignation. You don't want to just get angry and stay there and not do anything. When it motivates right behavior, that's when it's righteous indignation. Righteous indignation doesn't mean you just feel it. You feel it, then you do something with it. Okay? When you're channeling it productively, then that form of anger is a major motivational factor that we use or can use in our life to create positive change in the world. And that is the good form of anger. Again, this meme is from the movie Network back in the 70s. Brilliant movie. Everybody should definitely check it out. There's Howard Beale there saying, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore." And unfortunately, that's where we need to be, and that's where most people are not at. They're not angry enough in righteous indignation to say no, to influence other people to also become knowledgeable about what's going on that is wrong, and then get involved in an activist capacity to change it. Again, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And people, look at the religious figure of the Christ as, high holy consciousness, all right? Something that maybe we should aspire to pattern our life after, regardless of what you think about the historicity of the man or the figure, whether you think it's all astrotheological, allegory, or whether he was a historical personage. I don't care, to be quite honest. The message is what's important. Okay, and there's many other teachers. We could refer to Buddha or, Krishna or whatever. Okay, it doesn't make a difference. What I'm talking about is the pattern of action that these allegories or even historical figures teach us. Right, are different than how they've been contorted in modern cultural religious institutions. But when we think of even Christ in the New Testament, he got angry. He wasn't just somebody who was a total pacifist and never did anything. Did he teach non-aggression? Peace through non-aggression? Yes, absolutely. But, did he say there's never a time to pick up a switch and whip somebody's ass? No, he never said that because he did it himself. He did it when there was usury being practiced at a holy place. The coin changers of temple coins charging enormous premiums on them, a huge high inflationary tax, to get into the temple, the most holy place, in the Judaic tradition. And they were just totally, since they were a monopoly, they just charged whatever they wanted. And you know what he did? He took the switch out on their ass. And rightly so. Rightly so. So he did not get angry. He got angry and then did something about it too. I'm not saying go, take a bullwhip to your nearest banker either. Although it might be a nice image. So, if you're not outraged, you're just not paying attention to what's going on in the world. Anger is the proper emotional reaction. Righteous indignation is the proper emotional reaction to what's taking place around us right now. New Age deception number 3, we are all one, and therefore it's all good. There's nothing bad taking place. It's all good, folks. Just chill. It's all good. It's all going to work out. All going to work out for the best. We're right where we need to be. Very comfortable in our cage. Okay? So, let's look at how this deception works. A lot of New Agers, again, I'm using the word many here, not all, not a blanket statement. They will tout the understanding of the difference between right and wrong, okay, which I just explained to you as conscience, which is the absolute knowledge that we need to have to understand natural law and how it works, which again, that's what all religions are here to do. Let me clarify that. All religions are created and maintained to hold you back from an understanding of natural law and how it works. Because that understanding is the way out of the prison. And that knowledge is the only way out of this prison. Now, people will say that's an arrogant thing to say. Okay? It's the only way. Okay? The understanding of natural law is the only, and then living, not just understanding it, understanding and applying it in our lives is the only way we're going to end slavery. Will not be ended by any other way. It's the only, let me even qualify that. It is the only thing that can ever end slavery. Slavery cannot be ended without a deep understanding and application of the real laws of attraction, which are what I group under the term, the umbrella term, natural law, which means what I said as I defined it, not as any other researcher or writer or historian has ever talked about the term. It has nothing to do with man. The laws that exist in nature that govern the consequences of whether we behave morally or immorally. That is what natural law is, and that's what all religions are there to hold us back from an understanding of, so we stay enslaved. All right? So, this concept, it's all good. You know, right and wrong are dualistic. Okay? They're just judgments that we make. And they're not real. They're not really objective. You hear this all the time in the New Age movement. Oh, those are just negative judgments. You know, it's just all an experience. There's no actual right, actual wrong, actual good, actual evil. Those are just human invented terms. You know, nonsense. Right and wrong exist objectively. The laws that govern right and wrong exist in nature. I tell people say, how could natural law exist in nature? If human beings didn't exist, how could it exist? Well, if human beings didn't exist, gravity wouldn't exist. If human beings didn't exist, electromagnetism wouldn't exist. If something was put into creation as a result of creation itself, the process of creation, it doesn't matter what happens with human beings. Those laws are still going to be extant. They are still going to be existing in the universe. They are part of the fabric of nature itself. So the laws that govern right and wrong behavior exist no matter what happens to us. We interact with them through our free will, which I'll get to in another deception, that a lot of people don't believe free will exists. That's another big deception. So many New Agers tout that the concept of right and wrong are dualistic, okay? And therefore they're invalid. They try to convince people everything is okay. Everything is allowed. I've seen that in a natural law presentation. A New Age presentation one time. All is permitted. Everything is permitted. People are actually teaching this as spirituality. It's all good, so everything is permitted. See, you know what this really boils down to, folks? The dismissal of objective right and wrong? There's one thing it boils down to. Moral relativism. Moral relativism is the disease that is destroying humanity. Destroying humanity. A morally relativistic people become an enslaved people. That's an invariably true existing at all times and places, law of the universe. When you become morally relative and believe that right and wrong are just preferences that can be determined on a whim by a human being, you're heading into a cage and you're staying there. And this is where humanity is. Because we have bought so much nonsense that all these different religions and movements teach about the idea that there is no such thing as right and wrong objectively. And that's what natural law is all about. Coming to a direct, correct, deep understanding of the objective difference between those two modalities of behavior, right action and wrong action. And yes, there is a definitive truth about that can be known. And there are many people in the world who know it. Not nearly enough. But there's many people who do know that difference and live it. So this is just another dressing for moral relativism. And in my natural law seminar, I teach that there's a law. It's called the law of freedom. Here's the equation. It's a mathematical equation that governs freedom. As morality increases, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. Morality and freedom are directly proportional. Morality and slavery are directly inversely proportional. That is a law, a mathematical law of the universe that governs freedom and order versus slavery and chaos. And it all is dependent on, do we understand morality? So, moral relativism, look, the second tenet of Satanism, the satanic religion, of the dark occult system, which is what I spent 10 years of my life in, before I finally started waking up. The second tenet is there is no such thing as right and wrong. It is all relative, and humanity gets to determine those for themselves. That's called Satanism. And once again, I'm not asking you to believe that's Satanism. I'm telling you because I was a priest. I was a satanic priest for 10 years. And I'm explaining to you definitively that's called Satanism. I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm telling you that's what is part of that religion. All right? And that's why we are living a satanic lifestyle throughout the world, not just the West, not just the United States. The world is in Satanism. It is practicing Satanism. And I'm not trying to get all religiously preachy either. I'm just telling you, people don't have any idea what Satanism really is. They think it's this Hollywood variant of just dressing in black robes and doing some sacrifices by a fire. It's not what the ideology of Satanism is at all. It's about putting the self up on the pedestal as God, saying, I get to determine what's right or wrong, and ultimately saying, I get to determine who lives and who dies. That's what Satanism is. That's what Satanism is. And this is one of its main tenets. Moral relativism. Bullshit is what it is. And we need to wake up and understand it as such. So many people are in that trap. And the New Age movement as a whole propagates that nonsense. I'm not telling you every teacher does. Again, don't hear this as blanket statements. Generalities. It's very insidious, though. The correction to this, it's not all good, folks. It's not all good, all right? We have to understand in a streetwise manner, there's a difference between right and wrong behavior. And I'm going to explain briefly what that difference is. It's so simple, it's ridiculously simple. It's so simple. Like I say, before my presentation, sometimes I'll give you a little anecdote on this deception. Before my presentations, I lay up at night sometimes before I'm about to come up and teach this information. almost laughing to myself, almost, like I said, I've admitted this before, it's almost like a schizophrenic response. Like, I sit there thinking, I'm going to go up there and have to explain to people the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior, as if this shouldn't be the most common sense damn thing in the world. And me, I'm going to go up and teach that. It seems so utterly ludicrous to me that I sit in bed at night and laugh about it to myself. That should actually even be necessary. And sadly it is. So here's the difference between right and wrong in a nutshell. One little graph that explains it all. That which is right is that which is true, is that which is actually correct. It is based in the truth. It is that which is moral for a reason. It is in harmony with the laws of morality, in harmony with the term that I call natural law, cosmic law, universal law, law that governs the consequences of behavior. You could call it consequentialism. You can call it karmic law. I don't really care what you call it. It's a label. All right? It's in harmony with the laws of morality for a reason. When we take an action that is moral, that is correct, that is based in truth, that is right, no harm results to another being. Okay? So someone needs to be harmed for a wrong to have taken place. So if anything that doesn't result in a harm, in someone else for their property being harmed, is reserved as a right. It is action, okay, that is taken, and as a result of that action that is taken, harm to another does not result. Notice I've defined what a right is in the negative. This is called the apophatic definition of a right. You cannot define a right in the affirmative or the cataphatic definition. So there's two inquiry methodologies, apophasis and cataphasis. Most people will never have heard of either of these terms, and that's okay. All right? Apophasis. I don't have it here in one of these slides, so I'll spell it for you. It's A-P-O-P-H A-S-I-S, apophasis. Apo in Greek means away from, off of, or not, the negation of. And then phenai in Greek means to speak or to say. So apophasis means literally to say what something is not. To say the negative of what it is. Okay? So, and that's what I've just done. A right is an action that does not result in harm to another being. That's the apophatic definition of a right. Conversely, cataphatic definition would be you're saying what it actually is, not what it is not. Cataphasis. K-A-T-A-P-H-A-S-I-S. Cataphasis. Okay. So I'll give the cataphatic definition of a wrong now. A wrong is an action that results in harm to others. That's it. So if you take an action that results in harm, it's a wrong. I've said what a wrongful action is, cataphatically. It's that which is incorrect, not based in truth, in opposition to the laws of morality, and therefore immoral. So it's not all good. There is a distinct, delineated, defined quality objectively in the world through behavior that defines what a right is and what a wrong is. And unfortunately, 99.8, maybe 99.9 of human beings could not tell you this distinction. Could not specifically in clear language define the actual difference between a right and a wrong. That's why we're losing our rights, because we don't know what it is. You have to know what a right is in order to exercise it and keep it. Here are what the wrongful actions are, to clarify further. Okay? Wrong or harmful actions are murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, and coercion. Some would put lying in that, and I would probably agree and include lying is also a wrong, to willfully lie to another person. Okay? These are the physical, tangible, real world, result in measurable harm to another being wrongdoings. Okay? Murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion. And now, every one of those wrongdoings is a form of theft. As a matter of fact, no one can speak an action, can tell me or anybody else a wrongdoing that is not a form of theft. You could try to do it during even the question and answer session. You won't be able to. There is no such thing as a wrongdoing that is not a form of theft. Something must be stolen from someone. You are taking something that you do not own when you are performing a wrong action. Think about it. Murder. You've taken a life that doesn't belong to you. Assault. You've taken someone's bodily well-being, which is not yours to take. Rape. You've taken someone's free will to sexually associate with whom they choose, which is not your free will decision to take from them. Theft. You've taken property that does not belong to you, that someone else is using and is responsible for. Trespass. You've taken the security of another being in their own living space away, which is not yours, right, of you to do, not yours to take. And coercion. You've directly taken somebody through threat or duress, the threat of violence. You've taken away someone's free will right to choose a rightful action for themselves. Every one of those wrongdoings is a form of theft, and there is no one that can name a wrong action that is not a form of theft. So I tell people, Earth is a huge prison for thieves. We're here to learn not to steal. Natural law, you could sum it up in 2 words. One law, don't steal. Don't steal. That's natural law. That's it. In all of its form. All of its forms. We have to stop committing and condoning theft. So, some form of property is always being stolen when a wrongdoing is committing, and this includes life, rights, property, freedom. They are all forms of property that are not ours to take from another. It's not all good, folks. There's a difference between right and wrong behavior that is tangible. Again, this is all about conscience, the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong behavior. From the Latin prefix con, which means with or together, and the Latin verb scio, sciere, which we already defined as to know or to understand. Conscience, literally, when we put those together, means to know together. Okay? It is common sense knowledge. Knowledge that should be known together by all. Alright? The objective difference between right action and wrong action. Or in other words, that lost mode of human consciousness called common sense. And when we lose common sense, again, right into the prison you go. New Age deception number 4, it's all an illusion. Nothing is real. Okay? It's all just an illusion. So it's all just an experience. It's nothing to stay attached to. We don't have to worry about what happens here. The physical world doesn't matter. You know? And again, as a general rule of thumb, this is what a lot of New Age communities and teachers are propagating. The physical world is a total illusion that does not matter. The spiritual world is what really matters. This sounds just like religion when you really bring it down to that level and say it like that. That's what most religion teaches. And there's a reason. They want people to give up and stand down on creating real positive change, manifesting in the material domain. Not just in your head, not in some fantasy world, some other time, some other place, some other dimension. You know what questions I get about other dimensions? Time travel, other dimensions? Whatever. Okay? If it exists, great, wonderful. Are you there? And guess what? When you find out a way to get there, could you let me know? Because I'd like to get out of this place. Okay? But you know what? You have to be here now. You have to understand we're here for a reason. I've heard this, here's a big one, okay? I've heard this in the New Age grumblings or mumblings of late. You're not here to change the world. You're here to be changed by the world. What? Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay? You know, so I guess that child who's undergoing satanic ritual abuse, they're just here to be changed by the world, by that experience. You know? Tell that to a 6-year-old who just got anally raped. See what they have to say about it.
It's real.
This whole idea that the physical world doesn't matter. It's imbalance. It's a form of brain imbalance called right brain hemispherical imbalance, which is what all religion is derived from. At least the cultural religions and the New Age religion. Again, there are left brain religions, government, scientism, etc. Money, of course, both sides. It's all about money. You go to a New Age expo, see how much they're raking in. Myself and Michael, God bless him, helped me make those discs. Those discs were produced in my home with my own printer, put together by hand. So, and I couldn't have done it if I didn't have help from someone. So, that helps me, pay for some daily living expenses. And it's not like, you go to a New Age expo and the stuff is so jacked up there in price. It's also, there's so many vendors too. It's just a big, huge, it's not about knowledge either. Most of them are just selling trinkets. It's not like it's books, DVDs, lectures, real in-depth knowledge and breakdowns of important material. It's another form of materialism. And while they're pushing that the material world doesn't matter, well, ease up on all the little trinkets and just jewelry and crystals, and how about you sell some things that are in-depth knowledge, that people are probably willing to come and give you a little bit of support to see or hear. But the emphasis is off knowledge, which is going to be the next deception, actually. So this concept that's all an illusion is essentially saying, hey, since nothing is truly real, nothing matters. Nothing really matters. Why are you so worried about that little slavery thing? You're getting your panties all up in a bunch about children being raped by priests, or children being sacrificed by dark occultists who happen to be running the banking system, or who happen to be, actually calling the shots through the political think tanks, through all the governments of the world. You're so upset about just that's the kind of people they are. I mean, nothing matters. You're so attached. You're attached to this world. And a lot of religion teaches this too, and the New Age movement grasps onto this. And again, unless you really are around it a lot, you may not even have heard a lot of this. I'm telling you all from first-hand experience, having discussions with individuals. There's so much of this propagated in this movement, you would barely believe it. And once again, it's all right brain imbalance. Not only is it right brain imbalance, it's bullshit too. Okay? It's nonsense that needs to be rejected and called for what it is. It's not balance. It's not truth. What happens in the physical world matters. Or otherwise, why the hell did we come here?
Yes.
The experience is real, folks. We had someone at the the Free Your Mind 2 conference, okay, in Philadelphia last year, say, when bad things happen to children, that's neither good nor bad. That's just an experience. Really? Well, I agree with you. Yes, it is an experience, but the experience is real. This is how this whole oneness grows and learns and understands what it is. The totality of the all. Is everything one? Yes, it is. Absolutely. I'm not separate than you. We're all part of consciousness. We're all part of the dynamic, living body of everything, of the all. We're all in that. We are all individuated units of that one thing, which is why they call it a universe, one thing and change. Unit, meaning one, and versare, verso, versare in Latin means to change. It's the one grand thing that is constantly changing. That's what universe means. But that doesn't mean that the experience that happens inside this constructual realm that we identify as the physical domain isn't real. The experience is real. And if it's a bad negative experience, that is real. See, what this comes down to, it's what either materialism and scientism, which propagates that matter is primary to the spirit, or that the spirit doesn't exist or doesn't matter, okay? Or the religious movement propagates that spirit is primary to matter, and that matter doesn't matter, okay? Both of these are forms of brain and consciousness imbalance. This is left brain imbalance when you believe this is all that matters and is meaningful, and this is right brain imbalance when you think that that's all that matters and is meaningful. Neither one of them. See, that's duality. That's what duality is. When you place such importance on one of these or another, that's real duality. Non-duality in the understanding of these two constructs is they're not separate. They are one. Both of them matter equally. You can't live a life of total materialism and think spirit doesn't matter. That's way out of balance. Nor can you live in a spiritual daze and not have your feet on the ground, grounded in action, right action in the material world. That's also imbalanced. The truth of this, if you could understand this very simple graph, okay, I'm just going to bring them together and merge them. It's all one thing. You're in the spiritual domain now. We're in the spiritual domain, folks. We're also in the physical domain. They're one and the same. This is where consciousness, spirit, manifests the experiences through which it learns and grows. All right? Spirit is not superior to matter. Matter is not superior to spirit. We are all part of the one, which is the all. Again, right here, in this space, this is the spiritual dimension. This is where the spirit learns and grows. A balanced correction to, it's all just an illusion. At some level, yes it is, but at some level it's also very real. So, New Age deception number 5. You can never really know. Again, the de-emphasis on knowledge, or the claim that knowledge doesn't exist at all. Nothing could ever be known. All right? You can never really know. A lot of Satanists teach this. A lot of them. And you know what? Not a one of them believes this nonsense. It's called solipsism, and I'm going to define what solipsism is. All right? People don't understand. Dark occultists and Satanists, they have what you would call sins. They actually even call them sins. Okay? There are satanic sins. Things that a Satanist never wants to engage in or do, because it's bad for them to do it. Because when they engage in those behaviors, they don't come out ruling other people. They don't come out on top with a tactical advantage over people that they kept in ignorance. So they want to stay away from those modes of behavior. If they're going to rule and be the kings of the world, be the gods here, quote unquote, the small g gods that are ruling everybody else, they don't want to do these particular behaviors for themselves. But see, all of their sins, they propagate to other people. And they want them in those traps. You know what the very, very first satanic sin is? Stupidity. Stupidity is satanic sin number 1 in the system, the dark occult system of Satanism. That means no Satanist would want to, for themselves, engage in stupid thought. They want to know truth. Then they want to manipulate it and hold it back from others so that in their full knowledge, they can do a number on other people. And they're doing it. They're absolutely doing it. That's why I don't underestimate them as an enemy. I have respect for them in their intellectual capacities as an enemy and their willpower, what they're willing to do. That doesn't mean I like them. No, not a bit. Doesn't mean I agree with their agenda, not a bit. I'm trying to counter it with all the force of my will and care. But they are unified. They operate on a unified front, and when they have these sins or these things that they never want to engage in, they want to propagate those to others. Now, satanic sin number 2 is solipsism. And I'm going to talk about it on the next slide. And that's what they're propagating in the New Age communities. A big, huge propagation of solipsism is this thing known as the Course in Miracles. That may upset some people, and that's fine. It's solipsism. Here's what solipsism is. Now, again, this deception is called you can never really know. So it's saying nobody really has any knowledge. Nobody can really truly know anything. All right? That's the religion called solipsism. All right? Solipsism as a word comes from the Latin. The adjective solus, which means alone. No one else there. All by oneself. And then the Latin pronoun ipse, which means self. So when we put them together, solipsism means all alone by oneself, no one else present, no one else there. There's only one person there, one consciousness there. Everything else is a projection or an illusion. All right? In other words, I'm the only one here. None of you showed up here today. You know, if I was a solipsist, that was what I would believe. I'm projecting you in my mind. And it's all just an illusory experience, and none of you are actually real. Nothing that happens here matters. You can never know me. I can never know anything about you. I can never know anything, actually. It's all just perception. All just perception, and it's all meaningless. You know, that's solipsism in a nutshell. The universe revolves around me. This is all put here just as a construct of things that I could look at. You know? Like a big holodeck for my amusement. No other consciousness is here. Imagine what a dismissal that just is of other beings in general. It's the ideology that only one's own mind is sure to exist. I can only know for certain that my mind exists. I can't possibly have any other knowledge. Even if I did have any other knowledge, I could never possibly communicate that to others, so it doesn't matter. That's literally what the solipsistic belief system is. And I'm telling you, it's being propagated hardcore in the New Age movement. Knowledge of anything outside of one's own mind is unsure. Hence, there is no objective reality. No such thing as objective reality. It's all subjective. All based on perception, preference, whim. That's it. And nothing about the external world, and I'll even wrap that in quotes, external world, okay? And its workings can truly be known. So I can't know anything about natural law. I can't know anything about how the universe works. I can't know anything about the different fields of science. There is no truth. You want to define solipsism as a quote? There is no truth. That's solipsism. Now, apply that to what's going on in the world. Why do you think we're in a prison society? How many people do you think have bought into that nonsense? Too many. Too many. See, if there's no such thing as truth, there can't be any such thing as right and wrong. And therefore, morality is all nonsense. You can throw that right out the window. And you have moral relativism. And therefore, you have a society based in chaos and slavery. And I'm telling you who propagates this. The dark occult propagates this. Now, that's for another lecture. Actually, I'm going to be speaking on occultism for an entire day in Connecticut coming up in October. That'll be one of my next big presentations. I'm going to talk about, it's going to be called Demystifying the Occult. And it's going to be about what's the difference between mysticism and real occultism. Plus, what do different schools of occultism actually teach? And versus how they've been diluted and watered down and twisted and are teaching messages that even those original mystery schools never intended in their modern diluted forms. So that'll be a coming presentation. But essentially, the New Age movement is propagating this notion that there's no such thing as truth. It's all perception. And everybody's perception is equally as valid somehow. You know, somebody's opinion based on their blind belief is as valid as somebody else's years of research and knowledge. You know, and nothing could be farther from the truth. There is such a thing as truth. There is such a thing as knowledge. Truth can be known. solipsism is bullshit, folks. And anybody who believes in it is, again, it's really, I don't even like to look at it as a religion. It's such, I would say solipsism is the deepest form of chronic brain imbalance. It's a mental illness. And it can happen from left brain or right brain imbalance. I hope people can understand this little model as I'm going to describe it. When I do make a model or a graphic, I try to make it as simplistic as possible to just illustrate a basic, simple concept and try not to get too crazy with graphics, okay? If you look at each one of these lines, these white straight lines that do not waver, as representative of that which is the truth, that which has actually occurred in manifested reality and is occurring right now in the present moment, because that's my definition for truth. Again, I demystify the concept of truth. Truth isn't the totality of the mind of God and having to know every damn thing there is to know. It's what's happening. It's what has happened and what is happening. That's it. And, there's different levels of truth. Of course, we're not going to know every single thing that has ever happened on this planet, but we can know about what is actually happening now. And that's what I mean by truth. What's going on in your experience. So, if you look at these white, unwavering straight lines as the plane of truth, and then you look at these waves as human perception, and you look at those different waves as frequencies of human perception. Now, what a frequency means is it literally means frequent, where that's where the word frequency comes from in science. So, how frequently does this wave propagate? In other words, from crest to crest, right? Look at how long that takes to propagate. That's why it's called a long wavelength. When you have a long wavelength like that, we have a low frequency, meaning it intersects the axis, or the entire wave repeats with lower frequency, less frequently than a very high intensity wave, a high frequency wave. All right? So this wavelength of low frequency only intersects or interacts with truth. If you look at this line as truth and this line as perception, this individual's perception is only interacting or intersecting with truth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places in that graph. That would be a low-frequency consciousness. Okay? If we raise the vibratory energy and come into a more alignment with truth, we're going to have a higher frequency, because our perceptions are going to be in tune with truth more frequently. All right? So here, this could be considered a higher wavelength of light or a higher wavelength of consciousness in which the person is making more frequent contact with truth. Then here, it's a very high frequency consciousness where they're in much more contact with truth. What would happen if we made this go to infinity? What would it look like? It would look like a straight line all the way across the graph. And you'd be in contact with truth everywhere, which would be the ultimate level of consciousness. I don't know if there's any possibility for an individuated unit of consciousness to obtain that level of understanding. That would be the totality of the mind of God, you could say. All right? But the higher we go in consciousness, the higher our frequency and interaction and interception with truth is. So perception is not the reality. Truth is the reality, that line. Human perception is our gift to be able to comprehend reality, make sense of reality, to understand it, to understand what it means. And our work needs to be to align our perceptions to the reality that is actually there, objectively, independently from us. What the New Age movement is teaching is, no, it's all just the same thing, and it's all just, every one of these things is equally as valid. No, it's not. Human beings that exist at different times in their life, and different individuals exist at different levels of consciousness, because certain beings' perception is more in tune and more alignment with truth than others. Being all the same in our rights under law, under natural law, under moral law, has nothing to do with everybody being all the same. See, equality under law, cosmic law, doesn't mean everybody is all the same. It means we're all the same in what rights we have and what actions we may perform without harming others. Your rights are no different than my rights. We are all the same in rights. Okay? Where we're different is in our levels of understanding and perception. So to try to group everybody together and say, oh no, we're all one and nobody's different, is nonsense. Of course there's different levels of consciousness. All right? And we'll get into what the biggest divide in consciousness is later on. I call it the one true divide in humanity. So, to align our perception with truth helps us to make a diagnosis, an accurate diagnosis of what the problem is. And again, what this whole deception is about, again, this deception is, there's no such thing as truth. You can never really know, right? If that's the case, you can never make an understanding, a proper diagnosis about the nature of any problem, and therefore you can never solve the problem. Because what does diagnosis mean? To get down to the causal level of the problem and solve it from there, not at the level of the symptom. Diagnosis comes from two Greek words, dia, there it is written in Greek script, and then the transliteration next to it. Dia means through or by way of. And then the Greek noun gnosis, again written in Greek script, and then its English transliteration next to it. Gnosis means knowledge. So we put them together, diagnosis, diagnosis, by way of knowledge. To make a diagnosis means that you have come to an understanding of why a certain condition is manifesting by way of knowledge. The de-emphasis on knowledge through solipsism that is being propagated by the New Age movement ensures that you can never make an accurate diagnosis of the causal factors of any given problem if you believe in that. If you acknowledge, yes, that's how it is, you can never know. You're never going to try to know what created the condition. What were the causal factors? When you know that, then you're empowered to make real, positive, and lasting change in the world. Solipsism is a defining hallmark of spiritual infancy. It's someone who has not even begun to grow up spiritually. Departing from this diseased ideology is a surefire sign of the beginnings of human maturity and spiritual development. I call solipsism infanthood when it comes to our experience as a human being. Anybody who's still trapped in that is literally a spiritual infant. Objective reality exists. Truth can be known. Yeah, the universe was created to torment us, right? We can never know anything. Rights are inherent to creation itself. The laws that govern morality are inherent to creation themselves. They're based in truth and natural law. Those who don't know what rights are will never say the word no to anybody who is coming to and making an effort, making an attempt to take their rights away. And that's what the control system wants. They want a master system of control set up, and they want slaves believing in religion. Doesn't matter what flavor that religion comes in. You have to know what rights are. Then we'll have freedom. Because those who don't know will never say no. They'll never use the lost word. Let's see what time it is. Folks, I'm going to hold right there. We'll wrap up about 4 minutes early, and I will pick up the last 10 deceptions on the other side of our lunch break. Please be back here promptly. I will start accurately, promptly at 2 o'clock p.m. So be in the room a little bit before 2 if you have a couple of extra minutes for lunch. Everybody enjoy their lunch, and I'll see you on the other side of the break. Podcast series, that's all prerequisite knowledge. That's why I tell people, you want to understand the whole tapestry, you have to listen in order. At your own pace, don't skip around. From number 1 forward. There's 148 two-hour podcasts up there, and a couple of them that are even longer than that. I know it's a big investment of time, but I guarantee you do that on the other side of that. If you are willing to put that kind of time in, you'll come out of it with information that I guarantee nobody else is talking about. Nobody else out there is talking about at this level of depth. So that's my site. And this is why I do this work, because I want that condition to end. I am here to end slavery on this planet, and so are you, whether you understand that or not yet. Okay? That's what we came here to do, to end slavery. Make no mistake, and that is a theme that we will constantly be going back to over the course of today. What do I mean when I say the phrase New Age movement? Okay, this is important groundwork. So people fully understand what I mean when I use that term. Like they need to understand, what do I mean when I say natural law? Okay, so when I am saying New Age movement, what am I talking about? The New Age movement constitutes a diverse body of spiritual teachings and practices which are not commonly identified with traditional religious institutions and or practices. So that's all I mean by New Age movement. They're alternative spiritual teachings that could not be grouped into a category as a specific cultural religion. And that's all I mean by the term. Okay? I don't mean the zodiacal New Age, the new house of Aquarius that we're allegedly moving toward. Okay? That time period, what that may mean, what interpretations people may have in their mind of that. It's not what I mean when I say the New Age. The New Age movement is a loosely knit conglomeration of individuals that loosely adhere to certain spiritual teachings and practices. And that's all I mean by the term. Okay? This movement, however, does share some basic characteristics in common. In that, those who comprise this movement and espouse the teachings of this movement often disseminate many erroneous, false, quote-unquote, spiritual teachings, whether deliberately putting false information out there to confuse and deceive others, or by rote, meaning someone has taken in faulty information and then is repeating it by rote because they believe it to be accurate and believe that it can help others. That's what I mean by the New Age movement, okay, and how they propagate information. What I'm going to talk about here today is the New Age movement as a religion. And many people do not consider it a religion. I, however, do. And I'm going to explain to you how it's a religion. Then we're going to talk about a lot of the deceptive teachings of it. The first thing people have to understand is, what do I mean by the term religion when I am using it? And I'm using it from its pure etymological derivative meaning. Okay? The word religion in English comes from the Latin verb religare. Religare in Latin means to tie back, to hold back, to thwart from forward progress, or to bind. Religare. So the actual root verb is ligare. Okay? That means to tie up. And then religare means to tie back. So the prefix re actually means back or again in Latin. Okay? So that's where the word religion is derived from in Latin. When I say religion in the context of how I'm going to be using it here today, I'm specifically talking about false religion. A false religion is a system of control. Control. That's its purpose. That's why it is there, to control the mind. And then therefore control the behavior. A false religion is a system of control that is based in unchallenged dogmatic belief. Not facts, not knowledge, not truth certainly, but dogmatic belief. And what it does when we cling stubbornly to those dogmatic beliefs is it holds back the progress of consciousness. We become unconscious because we are stubbornly clinging to a belief that is untrue. That's what a false religion means. Now, interestingly, this word has a double meaning, because the term religare in Latin can also mean to reunite with, or to bind back to. Okay? So if something has been separated, or something has been dismembered from its original component, okay, we can be reconnected to it. And that's what a true religion does. A false religion binds away from truth. A true religion reunites us with truth. All right? And I always tell people the caveat here is, Mark Passio is an independent researcher, public speaker, radio talk show host, conference organizer, and freedom activist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mark has undertaken the task of assembling vast amounts of research in the areas of metaphysics, occultism, spirituality, symbology, and consciousness studies. In 2007, Mark began presenting this information in the form of a presentation series entitled What on Earth is Happening?, with the intention of bringing the implications of this body of knowledge to greater public awareness. Mark launched his own website in 2008 at whatonearthishappening.com, and what a great website that is. In 2010, Mark began hosting his own weekly internet radio show, also called What on Earth is Happening, which airs live every Saturday night on the Republic Broadcasting Network, and that's 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mark is also one of the co-hosts of the Free Your Mind, the Philadelphia-based conference on consciousness, mind control, and the occult. Over the years, Mark has worked closely with activist groups in his area, such as the Tesla Science Foundation, Truth, Freedom, Prosperity, and Survive and Thrive Philadelphia. Mark's latest endeavor is teaching an intensive seminar called Natural Law, the real law of attraction and how to apply it in your life. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Passio. Thank everyone so much for being here today. It's really great to see so many of you out here, and it's going to be a great day today. The session today is going to be information-packed, and I'm going to cover a lot of ground. I'd like to start off by asking people, how many people are new or relatively new to my work by a show of hands, please? That is great. I love to see new people turn out. So not everybody may be familiar with my presentation style, but you'll become so as the day progresses. I'm going to give a talk here today that is entitled New Age Bullshit and the Suppression of the Sacred Masculine Revisited, with even more New Age deceptions exposed. Okay, so that's the title card right there. Now, some people may say that's a little bit harsh of a title, okay? I think it accurately describes what I'm going to present here today. But for people that want a title with a little bit more of a delicate sensibility, maybe to post on YouTube or share on their Facebook page, I like to look at this presentation as Streetwise Spirituality for the 21st Century and Beyond. So that's the alternative title if the first one's a little harsh for people. Okay? And that's really what I'm going to be getting into here today. I consider what I do, I consider what I teach Streetwise spirituality. Okay? So it's spirituality tempered with logic and reason. It's spirituality that is anchored in right action in the world. Okay? So with that having been said, let's get started. But before we actually get started, I usually give a little bit of a caveat about my presentation style and about what you might expect here today in my presentation and what I would hopefully expect from the audience members. So my presentation style has been described by some people, and rightly so actually, as very intense. I can be very intense, and there'll be moments where I'll even get very passionate up here, possibly. Okay? So expect that. Some people have described my presentation style as combative sometimes, and I won't even deny that because, you know, so, it is combative in some ways. I look at it as I'm fighting the forces of mind control and deception. That can be combative. All right? So some people may get a little upset or even maybe angered at some of the things that I'm going to say here today. And that's okay. So be it if that happens. I don't expect not to upset some people. All right? So the fact of the matter is that the truth itself is combative because it's belligerent. It's been described, truth has been described by some teachers as belligerent. Okay, when you hear it, especially when you're first hearing some uncomfortable truths. Because by its nature, it's actually waging war against the forces of deception and mind control. So another thing I like to tell my audiences is I don't do this. I didn't get involved in what I do in presenting material like this to be liked. This isn't a popularity contest for me, okay? I don't do this to make money, to be popular, to make new friends. If new friends are made, great. It's an added perk. It's an added bonus. I won't fight that, but that's not why I do what I do. I tell people that if I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really want to be doing this. This isn't what I prefer to be doing with my time, to be honest. Okay? I do this with my time because I feel this is critical information for people to understand at the point in history in which we are living. Okay? I feel that I already know and understand what I'm going to present here today. I think I know it very well, actually. So, for me to keep repeating it, it's not really doing me that much good. I'm here to try to convey an important message, again, of streetwise spirituality to people who may have been deceived by the New Age movement. As we're going to, many people try to make their religion into the truth, when in fact what we, in point of fact, need to be doing in our lives is to make truth into our religion as a true religion. All right? Too many people are loath to do that because they can't admit that they were wrong about their former beliefs. And that's why we're in that cage that I spoke about. That's why the mind is in a cage. So when I talk about religion here, I'm not just talking about the cultural religions. These are what I call the cultural religions. See if I can get my laser pointer working. These are the cultural religions, as I refer to them. Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Taoism, Shintoism, Buddhism, etc., so forth. Okay? That's only one kind of religion. There's 4 other kinds of religion out there. 4 other main bodies of religion, main groupings of religion. And I'm going to organize them on this slide in a specific way, in a specific order, for a reason. So I put that on the right-hand side. Now on the left-hand side, this is another religion. It's called politics, government, the belief in authority. That's a religion. You may not have ever heard it described like that. Some of you may. But nonetheless, that's a system of unchallenged, dogmatic belief that is there to control people. Okay? And I put it on the left. Now, also on the left, we have this religion called scientism, as I refer to it as. Not real science, but science as practiced by government-funded grant money. Okay? And also dogmatic belief systems by people who hold tenure in universities or hold very influential, high-paying, high-finance positions in the scientism world that don't want their dogmatic belief system challenged by any new evidence, God forbid. You know? So that's also on the left-hand side for a reason. And of course, the 4th religion here on this page to round out the first 4 is the New Age movement, which I'm going to talk about as a religion. Now, 2 of them are on the left, 2 of them are on the right. There's a reason for that. These 2 religions are rooted in left brain imbalance. We're going to talk about the brain and its structure a little bit here today. These 2 religions are rooted in right-brained imbalance. Okay? And we'll get into that in a few moments. But that's why I organized the slide as such. Now, there's one universal religion. See, not everybody falls into these categories. Not every person here will believe in all of these. Okay? Some will be more aligned with some of these belief systems than others here, possibly. Some will have freed their mind enough to know that they're all bunk, and they're all just there to control you and keep you in slavery. Okay? So, different people have different attachments to different groupings of these religions. But I'll tell you what, there's one that almost everybody universally believes is real. And whether we even believe in it, that it's real or not, we're still living in a system of slavery that unfortunately makes it necessary for most of us to engage in even at a minimal level. And it's the religion that is the most universally believed in and binds and unites all the other religions together, and it is, of course, the monetary system. That's the biggest universal religion that exists on the face of the earth. And I would say not only is that most people's religion, it's their God. It's their God. Okay? Unfortunately, but that's true. It may be sad, but it's true. So these are the 5 universal overarching types of religion. The universal one that, again, binds them all together is the money system. So, again, these are all the things that hold us in a state of slavery. The one thing that people can reunite themselves with that can take them out of that bondage and control and slavery is the thing that can shatter all of these belief systems that hold back the progress of consciousness, and that is truth itself. And only the power of truth can do that. Nothing else. Nothing else. Unfortunately, in the world that we're living in, truth is muddled up and it's buried under these belief systems. And that's why we're in that cage. That's why Earth's in a cage, and its people are in a cage. So, what holds these false beliefs in place? Well, what holds them in place is occulted information, occult knowledge. Now, by a show of hands, I always ask this word because as soon as people hear that word, there's an emotional response that's usually attached to it. And that's mind control in and of itself. How many people coming here today had any idea or inkling that I would be talking about the occult by a show of hands? Most people, but not all. But a good 85% or possibly 90%. That's good. Okay? For the others who didn't know that, we have to clarify the term. Okay? The word occult comes from the Latin adjective occultus. All right? The Latin adjective occultus means hidden, talk about. The real reason I do this is because I recognize that in the time we're living in such a time of overwhelming ignorance and deception, okay, the fact that I understand this information and how it is deceiving a lot of people places myself, in a position of moral obligation to speak that truth to other people in order to help them to understand this information as well. That's why I do what I do. So another couple of caveats I want to mention to the audience members is that everybody here today should try to do 2 specific things within the best of your ability. The first is and this is if you want to take away maximum value from what I'm going to present here today. The first is try to set aside your perceptions of me. Now, I know that's very difficult for a lot of people to do. As a matter of fact, that's difficult for most people to do, to be honest. But I'm not the important one here, okay? I'm not important. The information is what is important. When you see this presentation online or you send it to some friends, I'm not even going to be in it. You're not going to see my image in it. You're going to see the slides with my voice over the slides. That's how I'm going to present it online. Okay? So, I'm not the important one. You have to try to take your attention and focus off things like how I dress, how I look, what my hair looks like, what my voice sounds like, all of those things. They're the unimportant parts of this. Focus on the information. If you focus on trivialities, it's going to detract your attention from the information. The second thing is be consciously aware of your own internal impulses, your own emotions that are going on, because you may hear me say some things that upset you. Okay? You cannot gauge the veracity or truthfulness of information based on your initial emotional reaction to hearing it for the first time. If you do that, it is a logical fallacy. Okay? Truthfulness of information has nothing to do with how it makes you feel. Okay? So I'm asking people consciously, don't just try to intuit or see how this resonates with you. You really have to think this information through deeply. Process it. Okay, come back to it even. We'll go watch it online after we're done here. Okay, after I post it. Watch it again. Really deeply process it. Don't just go off your emotional reaction and say, that made me feel bad, so therefore it can't be true. That's a logical fallacy, and people have to consciously watch for that reaction. All right. The last thing is that the seminar today is a tapestry, meant to be taken in as a whole, in its entirety. So I'm specifically asking people that if you want to take away the maximum value of what you're going to see here today, stay for the whole thing. If you can stay for the whole thing, you should stay for the whole thing. Because that's how you're going to become aware of the whole tapestry. If you hear bits and pieces, you're not really taking in the full message as a whole. All right? So I want people to get the maximum value out of this. You're spending your time to be here. You're paying with your attention and your focus to be here. And you paid money to be here. I want you to get the maximum value from that. And I think you all do too. So that's why I'm asking people, stay to understand the whole tapestry. If you don't want to stay for the question and answer session, I understand that. I'd like as many people to stay for that because I want to field your questions as well after I'm finished presenting. And a lot of times I don't have time for that, but I want to make time for that today. All right. Now let's really get started. So this presentation actually is meant to go hand in hand with my natural law seminar. Now, obviously, I can't represent this whole seminar today. I'm going to touch on some of the points of it. But this is a seminar that I gave back in October of 2013, and I've been talking about this material for years on my website. It's called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction, and How to Apply It in Your Life. This, folks, is the real law of attraction, not the New Age nonsense variant of the laws of attraction. These are the real, in nature, operating laws of attraction that we are all bound by. And if you really need to understand this information, it goes hand in hand again with this seminar. Now, I'm aware not everybody has seen this information. The discs are available in the back. This is available for free on my website as well. Okay? So the information here will stand on its own today, but you'll get maximum absorption of this information if you combine it with the natural law seminar. I just want to say that before I begin. I'm going to give a brief outline of what natural law is so people understand that term as I use it throughout the day. What is natural law as I am using it? Because many other researchers and teachers throughout the years have talked about the concept of natural law, and they may not be meaning it in the same context that I'm talking about natural law as. So this is what natural law is when I am referring to the term. All right? It is a body of universal, meaning existing everywhere in nature, non-man-made, binding, meaning they have an effect whether you understand them or believe in them or not, and immutable, meaning unchangeable by anything we are capable of doing. The laws that exist in nature, that we are bound by, they exist everywhere. They're not made by man. They're not made by any 3D beings at all, anywhere in the extant universe. All right? And they are unchangeable by anything that beings in this universe are capable of doing. All right? And what do they do? What does this body of laws do? It acts as the governing dynamics for the consequences of behavior, the behavior of intelligent beings, which is why I put here human behavior, or at least beings that should be intelligent. They're not always intelligent, but they have the capacity to attain intelligence and attain the understanding of these laws. That's what I mean by human behavior, the behavior of intelligent beings. So that's what natural law is. What does it mean to understand natural law? Understanding natural law means truly possessing conscience. Not thinking that you possess conscience, actually possessing conscience. Now, people often don't know what I mean by conscience. Conscience is knowledge. Conscience isn't behavior. The exercise of conscience is behavior. Conscience itself is knowledge. We'll talk about the etymological definition of conscience later on in the lecture. Conscience is the definitive knowledge of the objective difference, not subjective, not based in perception. The objective difference between morally right behavior and morally wrong behavior. That's what it means to have conscience. And that's what it truly means to understand natural law. What does it mean to act in accordance with natural law, to align our behavior with it? Acting in accordance with natural law means exercising conscience, or willfully choosing morally right behavior over morally wrong behavior once we've taken in the knowledge of conscience, once that difference is clearly understood. That's what it means to act in accordance with natural law. What is the result that we get when we live in accordance with natural law? We get a specific result when we align our behaviors to these laws of nature. When human beings live in accordance with natural law and are therefore moral beings, then they become and remain free, and their society exists in a state of order. That's what governs order in any given system of intelligent beings. Okay? What happens when we do the reverse in our behavior? When we live in opposition to the laws of morality, which is what natural law is. When human beings live in opposition to natural law and are therefore immoral beings in their behavior, they become and remain enslaved. And their society exists in a state of chaos, which is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly where we're at. And that's the reason we're there. So that's what it means to live in opposition to natural law. That's natural law summed up in exactly as brief a way as I can do it. But I go very in-depth on how this dynamic works in our lives in my natural law seminar, which I highly recommend everybody here to watch if they have not already. That's why we're in this state, folks. That's why we're on lockdown. That's why we're in a prison society. And, I recognize that it may be very difficult for people to hear if you don't already understand this is where we're at. If you don't already get that we're here as a species, it's going to be difficult for you to hear some of the things I'm going to say today. But that's where we're at. Nonetheless, that's true. So, the thing that differentiates my work and makes it different from a lot of other researchers is that I ask this fundamental question. See, some other researchers out there, they know we're in this situation, but what sets my work apart is I ask this one little, tiny, seemingly insignificant question regarding this condition. It's that question right there. Yeah, why is that the case? You can know that that's where we're at. What good is that? Unless you know what the causal factors that created that condition. That's the understanding of the real laws of attraction. The laws of attraction are about causal factors that got you to where you're at, to the experience that you're currently undergoing. And there's the question most people don't have an answer to. And there's the question I've been answering for 7 years of my life. Trying to help people to understand the answer to that question about why we're in the condition that we're in. So, for people who aren't familiar with my work, you want to go to this website. Just add .com or just type that into any search engine you happen to prefer. You'll get to me. What on Earth is Happening? That's my website, whatonearthishappening.com. Tremendous body of knowledge available at that site. I always recommend people go up to the podcast section. Don't become familiar with my work on YouTube. And it's great. Hey, if you do, wonderful. Okay, it's just an added bonus to expose my work to people. But, the YouTube stuff is ancillary to this site and the work that's there, especially the podcasts. You want to go to the podcast audio section, which is one of the main tabs on the site, and you want to go in order. Go back to number 1, listen in order. Again, it's a tapestry. It's a puzzle. I'm laying foundational work at the beginning. And later work that I get into in later podcasts, all that early work, those early